Undercurrents of Desire by Eugene Fabian. Summary. Gene Fabian and Nicey McKinney share a charged connection that began in high school, but falters under the weight of family secrets, societal pressures, and past regrets. The years between them erupt with near misses, unspoken desires, and a revelation that will set the stage for their reunion. As their lives collide against the backdrop of New Jersey's vibrant cultures, Gene must confront a dark promise he made, while Nicey battles her own failures and longings in the pursuit of a meaningful career. Their passions ignite amidst turmoil, forcing them to reevaluate not only their love, but also the choices they've made. In a heartbeat, their fates are thrust into chaos, but can love truly conquer the tumult of life? Prologue. The hallways of Plainfield High School were a mosaic of youthful energy. A chance encounter between a bashful boy and a spirited girl would set the stage for a lifelong journey. It was 1977, and outside, autumn leaves painted the world in rust and gold. As Gene stepped onto the second floor, the laughter of classmates faded, and his heart pounded with anticipation. He had to speak with her. He had to know her name. It felt as if the universe aligned as he approached her, his nerves electrified with hope. Would this fleeting moment spark a connection that altered the fabric of their lives forever? Little did they know, they were orbiting the forces of fate, where love and sacrifice would thread their paths together, only to be torn asunder by circumstances out of their control. Chapter 1. First Glimpse of Destiny. The air hung thick with the scent of burnt popcorn and the faint tang of sweat, a pleasant enough reminder of the YBCA event bustling before me, but it wasn't the atmosphere that made my heart race. No, it was the moment I first spied her, Nicey McKinney, dancing among the laughter and noise, a swirl of motion that seemed to bend time itself. There were moments in life that etched themselves into your memory, vivid and unyielding. This was one of those moments. I leaned against the wall, my back pressed against the cool wood, grounded while the world around me spun. Concentric circles of laughter filled the room as girls giggled over whispered secrets. But at that moment, the noise faded, the colors blurred. All I could see was her. Nicey was ethereal, with her tangle of curls bouncing against her shoulders and eyes that danced like green flames. I had never seen someone so effortlessly captivating. The way she moved brought a kind of gravity to the air. She spun and laughed, and the very act of being in her presence made me feel weightless. "Hey, Gene, you coming to join us?" A voice broke through my reverie. It was Carla, or should I say the ever-enthusiastic Carla, whose need to pull me from my shell was unending. Her voice struck me like a bell, jolting me to attention. "What? Oh, I stammered, glancing back at Nicey, who was now leaning against the refreshment table, a sparkle in her eye as she cracked a joke with her friends. Carla must have seen my hesitation. "You have to. She's the one, isn't she? Go talk to her. Honestly, it's like you're zombified over here." I laughed lightly, trying to mask my smattering of anxiety with grace. Zombified? Seems a little extreme. "Extreme is my middle name," she shot back, hands on her hips. You look like a deer caught in headlights. Come on, what could happen?" The fight within me raged on, torn between my inexplicable draw to Nicey and the deep-rooted reluctance that often sealed my lips. But something told me this was more than an ordinary day. As I pushed off the wall, my heart thudded in my ears. The world around me brightened as I approached her, each step marked by the pulse of possibility. Silence thickened, it was palpable and vivid. This silence felt sacred, as though I stood on the cusp of an intense revelation. "Hey," I managed to say, my voice barely cutting through the laughter surrounding us. Just one word, but it felt monumental. Nicey turned toward me, her laughter turning soft as though we'd exchanged a secret. "Hey there, you're Gene, right? I've heard about you, the shy guy in art class." Caught off guard, I chuckled awkwardly. "I must be a topic of conversation?" "Well, it usually revolves around your artwork," she replied, and a hint of mischief danced in her eyes. "Or your stunning ability to go invisible." "I take my invisibility skills very seriously," I replied, feigning gravity, but feeling warmth creep up my neck. The banter fluttered, a connection weaving between us, but it wasn't enough to breach the gravity that anchored me. My heart danced along a horizon of what-ifs, caught between ambition and fear, recalling all my previous attempts at connection that had crumbled before me. Just then, Carla swept back into the conversation, abandoning the small crowd of friends she had left behind. "Hey, Nicey, did you hear? They're doing the dance-off later. You know, the one where everyone just makes an absolute fool of themselves." With a delightful smile, Nicey glanced over at me. "Are you game? Or is your invisibility going to keep you safe during all the fun?" I laughed, a genuine thing that surprised even me. "I think I can manage a dance or two. Right, Carla?" "Of course. Unless you plan on hiding behind the curtains again," Carla teased. "No more hiding." "I promise," I said, the words slipping out before fear had time to catch them. Nicey's gaze held mine, a flicker of challenge sparking between us, and suddenly the room felt small, as if we were the only two people alive. It was in that charged silence, our playful smiles faltering momentarily, that I found my courage a flicker of something undeniably potent. "Let's dance," I said, and the challenge lay thick between us. Nicey raised an eyebrow, a grin forming that hinted she would never back down from something so dazzling on the surface as a dance-off. "All right, but I'm definitely going to show you my best moves. Don't say I didn't warn you." As other pairs began to step onto the makeshift dance floor amidst calls and laughter, I felt a deep desire to be right there with her. The sheer abandon with which she moved pulled me in like a tide, each step racing against my uncertainty. I knew, instinctively, that this moment could spiral into something profound. I slipped my hand into hers, a simple gesture that felt monumental, and with one swift movement, we were lost among the thrumming music. On the dance floor, the world dissolved again, reduced to the feel of her hand, the laughter spilling from her lips. Time lost its grasp as she twirled, bringing me deeper into the rhythm. And something more than just fun sparked between us, a connection that felt raw and alive. As Nicey spun back toward me, there was an intensity in her gaze that sent my heart racing. She was captivating in this moment, just as she had been across the room. "Let's do it. Show us your moves." Oh, my moves. Panicked, I laughed and took a step back. Maybe I'll save the impressing for later." "That's okay," she laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Everyone else is embarrassing themselves. What's a little more? You'd fit right in. I promise." Suddenly, faced with the brave clarity of her playful encouragement, I sprang forward. "All right, maybe just one," I relented, asserting a little confidence that surprised me. As Nicey clapped with delight, I suddenly felt the vast world of possibility stretched out before us. People swayed remarkably out of rhythm around us, and for once, amidst the uncertainty brought by high school events and the specter of previous connections, I felt exhilarated. The music shifted, light and bright, and something strange began to weave through the air between us, an undercurrent that hinted at a deeper connection, an invisible thread pulling us together. Then, in the blink of an eye, it felt like nothing else existed in the universe except for Nicey and me. Everything was illuminated in a golden glow, each laugh and brush of our hands capturing the moment. Another spin, and she leaned close, the warmth of her breath mingling with the exhilarating wisp of sound. "Ready for the real challenge, Jean?" I stared into those brilliant green eyes and felt gravity shift profoundly. "What's that?" I asked, a mixture of playfulness and fear coursing through me. "A kiss," she said, laughter sparkling in her voice. "Let's see if you can handle that." I hesitated. The spontaneity of the moment gave me both life and terror, but I didn't want to retreat anymore. For too long I waited in my reclusive waters, but now, behind our laughter, loomed an undeniable yearning. "Just a kiss, huh?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremors of anticipation threading through me. The music slowed, the chaos fading into a muted background as her gaze searched mine. The world fell away again. There was only her smile, the combative spirit igniting flares of hope inside me. "Yes," she whispered, an invitation that held every promise of radiant possibility. And just like that, everything narrowed down to this moment. I stepped closer, heart racing, breath hitching in my throat as time folded around us. Her lips brushed against mine, a gentle spark that sent a surge of warmth through me, and the dance settled into a quieter, nearly sacred rhythm. I felt her smile deepen, an electric thrum dancing along every fragile thread that connected our lives. A fleeting moment was all it took to blur the edges, to carve away the constraints that kept us apart. This chemistry, this dizzying weight of desire, unfolded within us, tangible and profound. But just as quickly as it had begun, the ripple of laughter swelled around us again, drawing us back into the noise, the energy of the event swaddling us warmly. And I wondered, even amidst the lively crowd, where this might take us. Was this the fateful first glimpse of something more? Are we destined for more dance-offs, McKinney? I quipped, our foreheads together, breath mingling in the thick afterglow. Count on it, she promised, the light in her eyes sparkling with mischievous joy. And with that, I knew. Every moment hinted at chaos ahead, intertwined destinies, testing the boundaries we thought were fixed. I just hoped I was brave enough to meet it. Chapter 2. Awkward Introductions. The twilight air lingered like a caress over the small coastal town of Fairhaven, where the ocean murmured its secrets into the sandy shore. I stood at the porch of the Sea Glass Cafe, the warm hues of sunset blending into a riot of oranges and pinks that reflected my own internal chaos. The cafe was a mosaic of old wooden beams and sea blue paint, lending it a rustic charm that felt somehow comforting, even amidst the unease stirring in my chest. It had been decades since I'd let myself dwell on what the memories of this place carried. The last time was a blur of youthful exuberance and heartache, entangled in the wreckage of abandoned dreams. I picked apart a paper napkin crumpled in my hand, seeking solace in the familiar rhythm of nervous fidgeting. Standing here again, nearly 50 years later, I felt like time had reversed, bringing back pieces of my younger self that I thought I'd left behind. Nicey, a sharp voice cut through my thoughts. Gertie, my childhood friend, ambled up the walkway, her cheerful presence bringing warmth and familiarity. She had an uncanny ability to light up a room, shoulders back and hair tilted just so. Gertie, it's been too long. I pressed my hands to her shoulders as we hugged, inhaling the lavender from her shampoo. You look just the same. Flattery will get you everywhere, but seriously, it's the vitamins. And you? Perpetually fabulous, I see. She stepped back, examining me with her sharp, sardonic eyes. You ready for tonight? Jeans made quite the stir. The mention of his name sent a spark of recognition racing through me. Gene Fabian, the charming boy from high school with an easy smile that could sway crowds. What do you mean? Gertie rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, come on, he's here to see you. You didn't know? I laughed nervously, dismissing her words with a wave. That's ridiculous, Gertie. What could he possibly want with me? He wants to reconnect. You two were quite the item back in the day. Her gaze softened, and I could see the kindness buried beneath her teasing. And let's just say that the stage has been set for some fireworks. I snorted, looking back at the horizon, shades now deepening into indigo. I doubt there will be any fireworks tonight. Just then, a figure emerged from the dimly lit cafe, his silhouette backlit against the lamplight, each step deliberate and careful. My heartbeat quickened as he drew closer. Gene. Blossoms of nostalgia unfurled in my chest, and I braced myself against the porch railing. Nicey. His voice was as smooth as I remembered, rich and full, as if time had woven a heavier texture over it. Gene. I offered a smile that felt both bright and uncertain. It's been a long time. Long indeed. His eyes held mine with an intensity I hadn't prepared for, as if trying to peel back layers I'd worked so hard to conceal. How are you? In that moment, all I could think of was how much I wanted him to see more than just the surface of me. I felt exposed, my vulnerability swirling like the ocean waves under the fading light. Oh, you know. Surviving, I suppose. He chuckled lightly, the sound breaking the tension. Good to know you're not just thriving. I mean, who would want that? The banter slid easily between us, buoyed by shared history, but I felt more than the years of separation. They washed over me like the tide, threatening to pull me under. So, you've been in town long? Just a day, but it feels different. He scanned around, as though seeking acknowledgement from the shadows of our past. Everything has changed, yet somehow, nothing has. The warm scent of vanilla-laced coffee wafted from the cafe, threading through the conversations of patrons inside. I caught Gertie's eye, her expression a mix of excitement and mischief. We moved toward the cafe, and as the door swung open, it released a breeze filled with laughter, a sound I hadn't heard in a long while. The atmosphere was alive, the clinking of glasses mixing with low, conspiratorial whispers. A sudden shift in the air caught my attention. I turned to find Evelyn, a newcomer to Fairhaven, a bartender with a feisty reputation, striding over with confidence. Her dark curls bounced as she approached, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Jean, Nicey, lovely to see you both," she winked. "Name a cocktail, and I'll make it happen." "You always know how to lighten things up, Evelyn," Jean said, and I marveled at how easily he navigated this space with humor. "Life's too short not to," she replied, brushing her curls back. "Speaking of short, a challenge was presented. Local trivia contest tonight. You in?" "I'm sure I'm rusty." I stepped back as Evelyn's energy dominated the scene. The spirit of fun was contagious. I could see Gertie brightly shining at the bar, her laughter weaving through the crowd. "It's trivia. You'd be in great company," Jean smirked, confidence radiating from him. "How about it?" "Are we seriously discussing trivia?" I chuckled, my voice tinged with trepidation. Who am I, the reigning queen of obscure knowledge? With a smile, Gertie nudged me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I may or may not have tipped them off that you're a walking encyclopedia." The laughter that followed warmed my chest, though underlying it was the familiar pang of insecurity. I couldn't dismiss it. "Trivia has never been my strong suit, you know that." "It's not about winning, sweet cheeks," Gertie grinned, the endearing nickname rooted in years of affection. "It's about enjoying ourselves." "Or watching Nicey make a fool of herself," Jean teased, but I detected a softer note threading through his words, as if he were saying something more significant amongst the playful jab. Our gazes danced, a silent exchange rippling with a nostalgia I couldn't define, a flicker of old flames eager to ignite again. Jean leaned closer, the scent of cedarwood and ocean salt blending in my senses, grounding me. My heart raced faster. At that moment, surrounded by laughter and camaraderie, it felt almost too good to be real, too easy, an echo of what we once shared, a history half remembered. "Let's do it." The words flew out before I could hesitate, and for a second I felt free, like a bird breaking from a cage built of long-held insecurities. As we all settled around a makeshift table, the ambience shifted, cascading waves of laughter echoing our light-hearted teasing. It became a warming blanket against the cool evening breeze. Jean caught my eye again, this time with a solemnity that felt heavy. "Nicey, don't say it." My words were swift, not wanting him to ruin this fleeting moment. "We're here to enjoy ourselves, no heavy discussions on pasts or regrets." "But that's just it," he began, but I held up a finger. "We'll talk later," I whispered earnestly, tightening my grip on the napkin in my lap. I reveled in the bolstering presence of friendship. "Let's just enjoy trivia." "All right, fine, but trust that it's an after-trivia discussion too," he grinned, and I felt my heart thrum, if only for the thrill of the impending challenge. Across the table, Evelyn and Gertie were concocting strategies aimed at winning. The room buzzed with electric energy, every heart in it eager for connection, playfulness, and perhaps even if we were brave enough, a touch of vulnerability. "It's going to be a blast," Gertie chirped, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let's put the world back on its axis tonight, shall we?" And perhaps, as the trivia began to flow like the tide, reminding me of the connections I'd long since buried, I wondered if Jean and I could discover something new together, like a second chance carried on the old winds of the sea. Before I could absorb the thought fully, laughter erupted over the first round of questions, but all I could think of was the nostalgia playing out in the rhythm of our intertwined lives. First friendships, audacious claims, and do I dare make a move feelings led me into something deeper and utterly unfathomable. Yet, lurking amidst the laughter, was still a sense that something, perhaps, a dark promise made to another, lingered in the shadows of my heart. The night promised much, but clarity hovered just out of reach. And I wondered, as sparks flew and laughter echoed, would I find the courage to confront what lay ahead, or would the tides of time pull me back into the depths once more? Chapter 3. Creative Sparks. Start the dim light of the YWCA's rehearsal space filtered through the dust motes dancing in the late afternoon sun. I could feel the weight of anticipation pressing on my chest, a faint hum that buzzed alongside my heart. Every fiber of my being was alive with expectation as I held the vintage script in my hands. There was something about the soft crinkle of the pages, their aged scent, and the ink fading that sparked an almost childlike excitement within me. This script was my lifeline, a connection to a world filled with possibilities, and just perhaps to him. Gene scored the fall of laughter in my mind, even before he entered. The sound carved through the silence, filling every corner of this space with irrepressible warmth. He strolled in, a panoramic presence that seemed to command attention without effort. All my breath caught in a loaded pause as our eyes locked. The recognition found in his gaze sent a jolt through my stomach, electrifying memories of shared laughter and whispered secrets. "Ready to make history?" he asked, his voice both playful and knowing, the corners of his mouth lifting in that charming way. It sent ripples of comfort through me, but also stirred the thrill of something unspoken that lingered between us. "More like trying to avoid calamity," I replied, feigning bravado as I flipped through the pages. These lines might as well be in a different language. The truth was that my heart could hardly keep up with the rapid changes in my environment. As we settled into positions, the space transformed into a stage one where our career ambitions morphed into an almost intimate dance. I felt the energy shift every time Gene entered my thoughts. The fragments of laughter we shared were electrified. Each line I spoke vibrated with his presence around me. It was a dangerous proximity, pulling me closer to the edge of an emotional precipice. "Just trust the process," Gene encouraged, pacing forward with a faint smile that shifted his whole demeanor. Even the way he carried himself held a natural ease. "We'll find those authentic moments together." "It's easier said than done," I murmured, though my smile betrayed my earnestness. I wanted to lean into him, to let our chemistry bubble over into something more vibrant, like the fervent emotions captured in the lines of the play. "Then let's forget the context," he said, our eyes a lit stage where meanings and layers flared. "Let's just be these characters until we lose ourselves." At that moment, an almost magnetic pull seized me, making my skin tingle. The stakes felt higher than mere rehearsal. It was a dance of vulnerabilities. Beyond the script, both of us had unfinished business, and I could sense the shadows lurking. Suddenly, the door squeaked open. In waltzed Roberta, the stage manager, a woman always overdressed for the occasion. Her outfit screamed pinstripes and power, clashing with the paint-spattered walls of our rehearsal studio. "Listen up, everyone. I've got some juicy changes to the lineup," she announced, oblivious to the electric undertone thrumming between Gene and me. The laughs erupted, filling the room with energy, spilling onto the floor like a vibrant splash of paint. Alice caught my eye from the back row, absent-mindedly twirling a paintbrush in her fingers while eavesdropping. She was as forthright as they come. "Speaking of calamity," she teased, idly catching my gaze, "we should pray Gene doesn't send us all to early retirement tonight." "Jealousy will get you nowhere, McKinney," he chimed in, a playful glint in his eye, and I sensed that a fun rivalry had ignited. Did I hear someone question my skills? A mischievous grin fell upon Luke, sauntering in with his boisterous energy. An actor known for his bold proclamations, he had once mistaken a rehearsal for a stand-up gig. "I can assure you that if calamity doesn't strike, I'll improvise it in, just for laughs." Roberta shot him a quelling look. "How about we focus on rehearsing rather than auditioning for a comedy special?" The room erupted again in laughter, and I joined in heartily, but beneath the banter, an awareness threaded through me, each joke layered with something deeper. The playful tension between Gene and me mirrored the scrutiny of everyone else in the room, and in those moments I wondered how long until someone peeled back the layers we had both so carefully constructed. "Let's set the scene," Roberta said, gesturing broadly as she rallied us into a semblance of order. "Gene, Nicey front and center." A rush of warmth soothed my nerves as we moved toward the light. There was something invigorating about performing alongside him. It was more than camaraderie. It felt charged, wrapped in the intimacy of our past. Our chemistry shimmered like the air before a storm, pregnant with something undefined, expansive yet constrained by unspoken words. As we prepared ourselves to dive into the scene, the atmosphere shifted. Roberta instructed us to breathe, touch the invisible thread that connected us. I tried to capture what it felt like, the pull of our shared bravado, the whispers of unresolved secrets tucked into the corners of our hearts. "I wish we could suspend time," Gene mused, discomfort flitting across his features as a pause lingered in the air like thick honey. "And what happens afterward?" I asked carefully, sensing the weight of his vulnerability hovering under the surface. Perhaps we could rewrite the ending. His voice dropped to a whisper, thick with camaraderie and something more. The rehearsal began anew, lines tumbling over each other, tempered by breaths that intertwined. In those moments of acting, I felt transported, merging my feelings with the words we exchanged. We shifted seamlessly between banter and tenderness, capturing the rhythm of every hesitation, every fleeting glance. As the last line hung in the air, I held my breath, reveling in the stillness. I could see Jean's brow furrowed, taking in the moment. Something inside me stirred, intensifying with the tension rife between us. I closed my eyes for just a moment, steeping in the silence until I could feel every heartbeat as if it belonged to both of us. Before I knew it, our faces were mere inches apart, his breath warm against my skin, a single heartbeat separating us from crossing uncharted territory. I caught the flicker of his expression, a blend of determination and uncertainty. Then, as if pulled by some magnetic force, our lips brushed, tentative at first, then soft and consuming. Time didn't just stop. It shattered and reformed around this fragile connection, exploding into vibrant colors that drowned out everything else. The kiss wasn't desperate, but weighted with promise of what if, brushing over each unspoken truth. My world flipped on its head, the rehearsed life spilling over the edge of instinct and desire. While we remained anchored by the world around us, something else stirred, daring, reckless, and utterly delightful. It was the lingering sweetness of anticipation wrapped in a whisper, fading softly into darkness, leaving us suspended in the throes of possibility. And just like that, in the echo of laughter and uncertainty, I wrote the uncharted lines of our story, feeling the pulse of our shared journey resonate in the quiet. Chapter 4. Stolen Moments. What do you think it would feel like? Jean's voice cut through the thick summer air, his brow furrowing slightly as he leaned against the weathered oak tree. It felt like a secret world, the air thick with mystery, filled with the scent of sun-baked grass and blooming honeysuckle. To really let go of everything? The question hung between us, heavier than the heat wrapping around our shoulders. I glanced toward the sky, a vast cerulean blanket speckled with wisps of cotton candy clouds. It was as if the universe were conspiring, sending down warmth and light, beckoning us to reveal our innermost thoughts. I think it would feel like flying, I replied, only half joking, my heart skipping a beat at the thought. Not that I ever got to fly, but if I could, it would mean leaving all this behind, the insecurities, the walls I'd built. It would mean freedom. Flying? Jean chuckled, the sound rolling like distant thunder in our shared bubble. Isn't that a little cliché, Nicey? Despite the teasing tone, his glance held something deeper, a shared understanding of the burdens that weighed us down. We were both tethered to the past, rooted in a history that clung to us like stubborn ivy. We found ourselves caught between rehearsals, the permission of time somehow stretched as we stole moments on the fringes of our own lives. His presence stirred something dormant within me, igniting a longing I had buried under layers of ambition and wit. Cliché or not, I pressed on, a small smile tugging at my lips. I feel like it's true in a way. What's the point of all this ambition if I can never break free? It's always about the next climb. Jean's gaze sharpened, his smile fading slightly. But isn't ambition also a prison? Maybe, I admitted, feeling the weight of his words settle in the marrow of my bones. Maybe it is, but it's the only comfort I know. With the sun pouring its late afternoon light onto our faces, shadows danced across the ground, mimicking the tumult inside my heart. I wondered what layers Jean peeled back in the warmth of vulnerability he rarely displayed. What lay hidden beneath the facade of strength he wore like armor. The rustle of leaves broke the spell momentarily, and I turned toward the rehearsals happening a few meters away. Students laughed, their carefree chatter and bright energy juxtaposing the gravitas of our conversation. But all I could hear was the quiet pulsing of connection, igniting something dormant between us. As if reading my thoughts, Jean stepped closer, his voice lowering. You know, Nicey, sometimes I think you hit the nail on the head without even realizing it. You're always reaching for more. More? I echoed, intentionally ambiguous, wanting him to dive deeper, to illuminate the shadows between reality and desire. And what does more look like? I guess that's a question I've yet to answer, he said, his eyes searching mine like a boy trying to decipher a puzzle, not quite believing he would ever crack its code. But if I knew, I'd share it with you. The confession lingered between us, heavy, yet exhilarating. There was an unspoken electricity in the air, charged with the possibilities teetering on the edge of connection. I could feel the pulse of our surroundings, the chirping crickets, the distant laughter. It held a warmth unlike anything I'd ever known. In one sudden movement, Gene reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The brush of his fingers was like the ghost of a summer breeze. Something ignited, an introspective fire that radiated warmth to the tips of my fingers. Nicey, he paused, his expression shifting from playfulness to something more profound. There's this thing I need to tell you. I could feel my pulse quickening, like the slow build of a storm. Go on. I've been promising myself to explore these moments we share, but it's complicated. He hesitated, forming the words like porcelain, fragile and precious. There's something I've held on to from the past. What if it's complicated? I challenged lightly, even though my heart was thudding loudly, competing with the sounds around us. Is it any more complicated than what we already have? Gene stepped even closer, the distance evaporating. You have no idea how complicated it is, Nicey. His breath was warm against my skin, drawing me in with its urgency, adding pressure to the air around us. Tell me, I whispered, feeling my breath hitch as our eyes locked in a silent duel, each of us searching for trust within the haze of wanting to be more than just friends. There's this secret I've carried for years. It's heavy, and it taints everything. Then let it go, I urged, my voice almost a plea, laced with the weight of vulnerability that somehow felt enormous and raw. Let it go. For a heartbeat, everything hung still, the world around us faded, and it was as if we were cocooned in a moment all our own, shielded from the hurt and chaos of the outside world. Just as Gene opened his mouth to speak again, a pelting rain began to fall, heavy drops drumming against the leaves above us, a sudden downpour that sent everyone into a flurry of shrieks and laughter. Of course! I laughed, glancing up at the sky in mock annoyance. What would a moment of clarity be without a little chaos? His eyes lit up, laughter mingling with the summer rain as he pulled me close, twirling us both without heed to the chaos around us. The water streamed down his face, glistening like diamonds, and for a moment we were both lost in the celebration of joy and warmth. But reality tugged at me, an anchor I could not cast aside. I needed to know more. I leaned in, my voice muddy with urgency. You can tell me your secret, Gene. I promise I won't. Not here, he interjected, his voice low and serious, cutting through the buoyant atmosphere that had moments before felt like a fairy tale. Not where everyone can see us. Is it because you think they'd judge? I asked, the knot in my stomach tightening, weaving strands of insecurity through my heart. No, it's because it's too precious to share in pieces. It deserves more than this. I searched his expression, digging deep to find a reply that might ease the tension. Then, without thinking, I leaned in, closing the small distance between us, and pressed my lips against his. The kiss ignited something. It felt like merging rain and sunlight, creating a sort of magic that demanded no explanation. But also, it left a taste of longing, an unfinished melody that needed completion. As the kiss deepened, the world around us dissolved entirely. The laughter, the storm, the heat of exposure, all of it melted away, and only we remained. Then, just as I felt the crescendo building, a splash of water hit my back, breaking the spell and driving me back to reality. Our kiss broke, laughter escaping both of us, mingling with raindrops. I could hardly process what had just happened when Gene stepped back, both of us breathless, caught between exhilaration and confusion. Wow, he breathed, his eyes wide and bright. That was unexpected, I offered, half teasing, half wanting to hide my deepening embarrassment. Definitely unexpected, he echoed, his expression shifting back, a mixture of vulnerability and amusement dancing across his face. Okay, your turn. I shot back, a smile gracing my features, part daring and part pleading. You promised to tell me your secret. Later, he replied softly, the storm still roaring around us, yet somehow feeling like a reprieve. We have time, don't you think? And in the chaos of laughter, raindrops, and soaring potential, I couldn't help but feel what lay ahead would define us in a way we could never foresee. Yes, I murmured back as the atmosphere hung heavy with promise. We have time. Against the world swelling around us, I felt a flicker of hope catapulting into the heart of the unknown. Chapter 5. The Heartbreak Departure. The air in their little family kitchen was thick and heavy, tempered by the scent of burnt toast. I stood at the counter, the chipped ceramic mug warming my hands, watching the steam rise and twist. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting delicate patterns that danced against the yellowed walls. But no sunbeam could penetrate the tautness that gripped my heart. "Nicey, you spilled coffee on the floor again," shouted Gerard, my younger brother, barely glancing up from his phone. Typical. He was always wrapped up in his little world, only aware of the chaos around him when his universe was disrupted, like when he broke Mom's favorite vase in a fit of absent-mindedness, or now when I couldn't seem to maintain my balance in this turbulent house. I inhaled deeply. The rich aroma of coffee did little to soothe me. I'd never gotten used to the morning routine, a cacophony of overlapping conversations, the slam of cupboard doors, and my mother's nostalgic reminiscences of good old days she had just lived through. Now, flurries of laughter and the sound of plates clinking felt like the lead-up to a funeral, the kind where everyone jokes about the deceased before sobering up and becomes acutely aware of their absence. "Do you think I can get a ride with you to Mom's after school?" asked Brinley, my teenage niece, her voice lilting with hope as she fixed her hair in the mirror above the sink. The sound of her rummaging through cosmetics was punctuated by the scrape of a spoon against a bowl, each clink signaling time slipping through our fingers. "Yeah, sure," I replied, flashing her a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I was aware that soon enough, Mom's would no longer mean the familiar bumps and corners of this house. No more awkward family dinners that turned into heated debates about everything from local politics to current trends. No more impromptu game nights, where my brother Gerard's never-ending stream of jokes and Brinley's infectious giggles brought life to the stuffy air. The shadows of impending separation were stretching, growing longer as the day progressed. "Nicey," my mother's voice broke through my reverie, thick with an emotion that seemed foreign. "Can you help me finish packing up some of these boxes?" Her words hung in the air, tinged with a sadness I didn't want to face. "You know how your father gets. He wants to do it all in a single haul." "Sure, Mom," I murmured, but the lingering weight left by my father's insistence on efficiency filled the room instead. For him, packing meant moving forward, whereas all this felt like a retreat, a regression into a past I never really knew well enough to miss. "Nicey, I need your opinion on what we should take. This is your childhood, after all." Anticipating my reluctance, she threw me a smile, as if to sugarcoat the reality of dispersing my entire life into cardboard boxes. "Yeah, I'll miss the old place. Not like I'll never come back." I laughed, but the sound was flinty, brittle. It didn't feel right, pretending that memories etched in the threads of carpet and the scuffs on the wall could be effortlessly uprooted. I could feel her gaze on me as I began sifting through items, a silent understanding passing between us. We both knew that our family, once a tight cluster of individual ambitions, was expanding, and the center we all orbited would soon dissolve. As I held up a faded photo, the four of us, sun-bleached and laughing on a beach trip, I suddenly thought of Jean. It felt like yesterday when we'd run across that shore, careless and alive. A sharp intake of breath caught my throat. "Are you all right, Nicey?" Mom's voice sliced through the memory. "Yeah," I forced a smile that didn't come, tucking the photo back into the box. My mind wandered back to our last conversation, the honesty lingering in the air like an unspent area, ripe with emotions we had dared not speak aloud. Jean stood outside, oblivious to the turmoil swirling within the McKinney walls. He leaned casually against his old pickup truck, the sun glinting off the faded red paint. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, filtering through the trees. He had come by to check on Nicey, to find closure in the echoes of their past. But watching her move through the world with such grace felt like knives. In his heart, a tempest brewed, racked with the fear of old promises slipping away again. Wasn't it his fault he hadn't tried harder to reach her across the gulf? He could still hear her laughter from years ago, see the way her eyes sparkled, and yet here he stood, an ominous shadow lingering at the edge, waiting. "Hey, Jean," shouted Lily, his neighbor's daughter. A whirlwind of energy with bright blue sneakers and two pig's tails flying, she was the kind of brightness he needed right now. "Want to help me with my bike? It's making that weird noise again." "Sure, I'll be right there," he replied, but his thoughts were tethered elsewhere, caught in a whirling dance with regrets and what-ifs. Lily led him to her bike, her chatter as bubbly as soda fizz. "And then we're going to ride to the park, right?" Her wide-eyed enthusiasm was infectious, pulling him out of his thoughts, if only briefly. As she pointed out the creaky pedal, Jean forced a smile, but inside, his heart churned. "What's up with you, old man?" asked Marcus, a familiar voice cutting through the air, accompanied by the scent of fried bacon from the grill nearby. "You seem awfully quiet today." "Guess I'm just not enthusiastic about the upcoming move," Jean admitted, leaning against the bike, arms crossed, the tension in his shoulders betraying him. "Nicey moving away, has you bummed, huh?" Marcus prodded, a knowing smirk creeping up the corners of his mouth. "'Cause you two always had this thing." "It's just life, you know?" Jean replied, but his voice held a quaver. The weight of his dashed hope pressed heavily, and he wondered how long they could remain in the realm of the unspoken. Marcus laughed lightly, shoving him playfully. "You're full of it, man. Just talk to her. You might surprise yourself." Jean sighed in frustration and shook his head. It felt like stepping into a minefield littered with things he could never say out loud. But the truth weighed down on him like stones. He had buried his feelings with a promise he made long ago, a promise that colored every decision he'd made since. Scene break. Inside the house, the tension thickened. My mother busied herself, searching for stray items that needed packing, as Gerard and Brinley bickered over the TV remote, each unwilling to let go of their preferred show. This was our final extension together, and I sought solace in the mundane. "Hey, can you not hog the damn TV remote?" Brinley scoffed. "I'm just trying to catch this last episode. You've had it long enough." Gerard shot back, childlike stubbornness creeping into his tone. "All right, you two, how about we just talk instead?" I suggested, moving between them in the small living room, which felt magnified by our tension. "About what? The fact that we're leaving this dump?" Gerard muttered, its edge sharper than he intended. "Yes!" Brinley's eyes sparkled with mischief. "We could dig into Gerard's collection of treasure maps, or maybe find out why you have 6 signed baseball caps stuffed in your closet." Even in this moment of impending farewell, all I could do was smile, a bittersweet facade as I watched them bicker. These moments felt precious, snippets of a life that would soon shift. But beneath the surface, a deeper tension brewed, thrumming with unspoken words that needed airing. In the chaos of childhood memories rushing forth, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I already knew who it was without looking. The vibrations echoed with longing. Jean. Had he caught wind of my family's move? Could he sense the impending farewell? Or was it the thrill of uncertainty that pulled at my heartstrings? "I've got to step out for a minute," I announced, an impulse that felt brave even if uncharted. I slipped outside, resting my back against the porch railing, just as Jean rounded the corner, the light reflecting off his tousled hair. "Nicey," his voice was an anchor in the wind. "Hey," I managed, noting the cautious smile that broke across his lips. "That's a bittersweet way to say goodbye, huh?" he said, his eyes searching mine for answers. Had he come to make the weight of our past tangible, or was this another conversation drifting, yearning for place? "Yeah," I breathed in, a wave of emotions flooding my senses. It's hard to say goodbye to all of it. He took a step closer, confusion breaking through the lines of his worry. "You don't sound convinced. You had everything planned, right?" The air between us crackled, heavy with the weight of memories shared and unshared. My heart raced, with everything unspoken, filling the gap of silence with each passing second. "Sometimes the plans don't align quite right," I replied, my voice hesitating, threading through my uncertainty. The moment stretched, full of uncharted territories. The glint in his eye wasn't just concern, it was a flicker of hope tinged with desperation. "Are we really doing this?" he asked softly. "Are we really doing this?" echoed in my mind. For a moment, all that had separated us felt inconsequential, mere barriers to the tempest of feelings brewing beneath the surface. "Maybe we should make our own promises, Jean," I said tentatively, the suggestion both enticing and terrifying. He stepped closer. The resolve in his gaze balanced the melancholy in the air. "Let's do that then," he whispered. But before I could respond, the shout of my brother cut through the air, the ordinary chaos of our lives rushing back to take its hold. "Hey, Nicey, Mom needs your help." "Yeah, I'll be there," I called over my shoulder. But the moment hung, uplifting and laced with promise. Gene's fingers brushed against mine before retreating, his warmth lingering in the chill air between us. As I turned back toward the house, I felt the weight of all futures unwritten, all endings unspoken. "Goodbye doesn't have to be goodbye, Nicey," Gene called after me, his voice a lifeline amidst uncertainty. I paused at the doorway, echoing his unsteady hope as I prepared to walk through the threshold, and with it, into the unknown. Chapter 6, Years Apart. Do you ever think about what we could have done different? I leaned back, my fingers curling around the mug of lukewarm coffee, hoping the steam might stir the memories buried in the back of my mind. The cafe's chatter swirled around us like autumn leaves, a warm backdrop of laughter, clinking cups, and the soft hiss of the espresso machine. Gene's eyes flickered, and for a moment, the world around us paused. He sighed, the weight of decades folding into that one exhale. "Every day," he said, his voice unexpectedly soft. Silence bloomed between us, hanging heavy yet somehow comforting as we ignored the voices around us. I watched him as he stared into his cup, deep in thought. There was a stillness in him now, a kind of gentleness that seemed at odds with the vibrant man I remembered from high school. His hair was graying, yet there was a spark there that still drew me in, something magnetic that tugged at the frayed edges of my heart. "Sometimes I wonder if that promise I made—" He trailed off, shaking his head almost imperceptibly, as if even thinking the words could fracture the moment. The silence wrapped around us like a familiar blanket, one stitched from shared joys and sorrows. In this cafe, under the low hum of conversation, my childhood flooded back days, spent spinning dreams on the playground, the thrill of our first shared kiss beneath the aging oak tree behind our school. Gene had been more than a crush. He was an anchor in a storm of adolescence. Yet the choices we'd made had spun us off into different worlds, long before I even realized the gravity of what we were losing. The smell of brewed coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of pastries, grounding me in the present, yet eliciting echoes from the past. The piano in the corner struck a tuneful note, the kind that made my heart pang with nostalgic ache. "You remember the songs we used to sing?" I ventured, weaving through the tangle of memories as if testing the waters. Gene smiled, his lips curving at the corners. "How could I forget? You were always the one with the better voice." The way he looked at me sent a gentle shiver down my spine. It was like he could see the younger me behind the years full of hope, wild dreams, and untamed excitement. Then, abruptly, the air shifted. Laughter erupted from a nearby table, drawing our attention. A couple sat together, their animated exchange sparking an ember of mirth in my chest. I glanced sideways at Gene, who stared into their world momentarily, the longing evident in his furrowed brow. "Do you think they even know?" he mused, his tone drifting into silence once more. "Know that it doesn't last? Is that so?" I couldn't help but tease lightly, though the truth of his words resonated painfully. "That everything fades?" He paused, considering. "I think they just don't want to look too hard." My heart twisted as I recalled late-night talks brimming with dreams of our futures, a promise that had once felt like destiny. Life and distance had morphed the colors between us to muted grays. I yearned to ask him how he had spent the years, not just to know, but to share, to have the chance to mend the chasm time had woven. The moment stretched and tightened, like pulled strings on an instrument, and I finally broke the spell. "What about you, Gene? What did you choose His gaze finally lifted, piercing and brilliant. "When you left, I chose to keep my promise." The conviction in his voice shook me. What had he sacrificed? What had I? My heart raced, each thud echoing like a distant drum. Before I could respond, the cafe doors swung open, a gust of autumn air swirling in with a new arrival. A woman sauntered in, a whirlwind of loud laughter that contrasted sharply with our quiet conversation. She wore vivid red, a bold statement that attracted eyes, including mine. Our table became momentarily lost in the vibrancy she brought, cheers and greetings following her like a radiant halo. "Nicey, Jean," she exclaimed, flouncing over. "You need to come and meet the people at my table. They're on a mission to prove that coffee is the true source of life." In the brightness of her enthusiasm, I felt the brush of reality, our shared past momentarily being pulled from under us. "Well, we are discussing the existential quality of our coffee here. So," I laughed, grateful for her intrusion, even as it clouded our deeper conversation. Jean grinned, his moods shifting sharply. "Maybe we should find out if coffee can really change lives." The woman Elena pulled us both along, her laughter infectious. As we crossed the cafe, I caught glimpses of our shared history again, memories folded neatly away like pressed flowers. With every fleeting moment, each joke shared, each smile sparked between us, I felt warmth seep back in. But tension remained like a shadow at the edges of light. Not far from the bustling crowd, I caught sight of a man I recognized, a quiet contender in the tapestry of my life. David, my husband, stood at the cafe entrance, a wiry figure cloaked in disinterest, fidgeting with his keys as he scanned the room. He spotted me, the relief apparent on his face, and I felt an inexplicable pang at the sight. In that instant, the tension between Jean and me cracked like glass. "Hey, folks." David's enthusiasm was tinged with an edge I recognized all too well, his attempts to foil anything I might have with Jean or anyone that diverted my attention from him. "What's this?" His eyes flitted between us, the unspoken questions imbued with competition. "Just coffee and a philosophy on life," Elena chimed. "You should join us." "I think I'd rather have a chance to talk to my wife," David said, his voice hovering just above the din. I felt his gaze boring into me, a reminder of the realities waiting outside our moments. "We were just reminiscing," I offered, choosing a lighter tone, but the heaviness of the situation settled over me like a thick shroud. Resentment twisted, tightening the space between us. David frowned, his perception sharp. "About high school?" "Yeah, about songs, nothing too serious," I tried to assure, but I felt Jean's eyes shift to me, searching. "The past is—" Jean hesitated, his smile faltered as a wave of complexity rushed back. "It's just sometimes harder to shake off than we think." David's brow raised, turning to Jean. "Who's this guy, Nicey?" I saw Jean tense with uncertainty, every inch of him alert, every muscle bound as if preparing for a deluge of confrontation. "Just an old friend," I muttered, a half-hearted smile creeping across my face. My attempt to ease the rising tide only reignited the flames of jealousy in David's eyes. A laugh erupted from Elena, cutting through the charged silence. "Well, let's toast to old friends and all those bad choices we made. You must have a few of those, Nicey." "Not really," I choked out, feeling the weight of my words, yet unaware of how genuine amusement danced behind my laughter. The night continued to twist and turn, a delicate balance of remembering and forgetting, bonding and pulling apart. In the whirl of voices, I caught fleeting glimpses of what could still bloom between me and Jean, amid memories soaked in regret. But as David's arm tightened around my shoulders, I felt the weight of my promises echoing back. They held me against a current that threatened to sweep me away. Could I unravel what he felt was secure, what I'd promised him, and take the plunge into the chaotic waters with Jean again? "Do you think it was all worth it?" I whispered to Jean as the laughter faded into a blurred hum around us, my heart racing against the choices I faced. Who knows, maybe it's just about how we choose to remember. I caught his gaze, the longing unhidden, and suddenly, without our coffee, the bitter cold air returned with a vengeance, reminding me, some fires burn hotter in the shadows than they ever do in the light. Would I dare fan the flames? Chapter 7, Fateful Reminders. It was an evening thick with the unyielding scent of old paper and dust. I had been tidying my late mother's study, preserving the sense of her in every nook and cranny, when my fingers brushed against the edge of something small, thick, and coated in a sheen of age, an envelope. Curiosity drove me to open it as if it held the secrets of the universe, which, in its own way, it might have. Inside rested a yellowed photograph, adorned with the edges of time's careless hands. Jean and I stood beneath the sprawling branches of an oak tree, the limbs like the arms of forgiving giants. We wore awkward smiles, the kind that only youth can ignite, full of possibility and ignorance of the years to come. His dark curls were tousled by the wind, and my laugh seemed captured mid-flight, echoing innocence that felt both familiar and achingly distant. I felt a weight settle in my chest. Why did nostalgia always carry the ghost of a bittersweet ache? I tried to shake it off, but with every glance at that image, I found myself not just reflecting, but yearning. I remembered the warmth of his presence, the way he'd look at me as though I were the only person in a crowded room, a secret we held between us, safe from the noise outside. But as time dripped away, we became strangers to each other, and perhaps even to ourselves. What haunted my thoughts more than the memory was the question of whether Jean, now, after all these years, felt even a fraction of what I did. Did the photo stir in him this same heartbreaking nostalgia? I paced the study, the sound of my footsteps breaking the spell of silence, before finally deciding I wouldn't allow my emotions to wither into memories alone. The world outside glowed with the vibrant hues of twilight, and I found myself drawn to the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the past that now lived just beyond my reach. But instead of memories, I saw a reflection, one that felt strikingly incomplete. I was someone who had built walls so high, I'd almost forgotten how to let anyone in. The regret settled around my heart, mixing with a familiar longing. There was an ache, a pull toward Jean, one that seemed to tether me to the earth, yet also threatened to draw me away into the unknown of what could be. A knock startled me, light but firm. It shattered the silence, and I instinctively tucked the photograph into my pocket, my fingers absent-mindedly tracing its edges. I opened the door to find Sarah, my bright and ever-enthusiastic friend, standing there, a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands, delicate petals like small flames blooming against the dusk. "Surprise? Just because," she chirped, her smile wide and genuine. "Figured you could use a little cheer." She stepped in, and the room brightened, as if her joy had painted the walls in softer shades of hope. I let out a laugh, half-baked in disguise. Cheer seems like a lofty goal on a day like this. "Oh, come on. I know you've fluffed through every corner of the house at this point. What is it this time? The attic? The spice rack?" She raised an eyebrow, feigning disbelief. Okay, guilty," I replied. "I've been cataloging everything, but I found something that—" The words caught, the photograph pulsing against my thigh, something that may change the way I look at the past. She tilted her head with curiosity, eyes narrowing in on me. "Do tell." Sarah edged closer, as if she could divine the contents of my heart. She was always one to pry things out of me, and despite the fragility of my own revelations, I welcomed her concern. "I found an old photo of Jean. Us, actually," I confessed, my mind darting back to that moment beneath the oak tree. "Jean? Your high school crush? Oh my God, Nicey, why didn't you say something sooner?" She spun, feigning disbelief, her smile infectious. "I always thought you two would end up together. You've never really moved on, have you?" There was a slight edge to those words, a touch of accusation even hidden in her jubilant tone. "Sarah," I began, but she rushed me, a waterfall of thoughts bursting forth. "It's even better that you ran into him again after all those years. Was it magical? Did you feel it? That spark?" She raised her hands as if conducting an orchestra of emotions that only the two of us could witness. I chuckled lightly, spinning my lack of confidence into humor. It was more complex. The memories are wild in my head, a chaotic blend of nostalgia and regret. Her laughter faded, and a seriousness filled the room. "You still have time, you know," she said gently, her voice like a comforting balm. "Time to figure this out. Life's too short for what-ifs." I nodded, still holding tightly to my inner trepidation. "That's the thing. I think he has a dark secret about his past. We're both wrapped in all this history, Sarah." With an exaggerated shrug, she replied, "Well, why don't you dive in? Secrets are merely a matter of honesty. You can't let anything hold you back." "Do you think I should talk to him?" I asked, the thought almost terrifying. "Absolutely. Isn't that the point? Just be honest with him about how you feel." Her words hung in the air, fueling a blend of courage and fear. I wanted to talk to Jean, to understand him again. But what if the past stood between us, like an invisible wall, blocking the path he now walked and the path I stood upon? Before I could respond, heavy footsteps approached. The sound echoed, bursting the bubble we had created in that shared moment. "Nicey, Sarah," came the admonishing voice of my brother Mark as he rounded the corner. "We're only being supportive." Sarah called out in jest, a glint of mischief in her eyes, as she tried to shove the wildflowers behind her back. Supportive? Oh, I see, Mark replied with teasing sarcasm. You're conspiring against me again, huh? Absolutely, Sarah shot back, feigning innocence. We're just discussing Nicey's romantic life, no big deal. More like I'm on the verge of exploding just thinking about it, I interjected, a playfulness leaking through my anxiety. What's the holdup? You never know where the next adventure might lead you, Mark said, stepping closer, hands on his hips. An air of mock seriousness flared around him. What are you, 20? Start acting like it. My laughter spilled from my lips, joining the threads of our familial banter. Mark always had this way of mixing in gentle prodding with straightforward sincerity, and it worked every time. I'm actually 60, thank you very much, I shot back, my gaze torn between the living room and the attachment I felt toward the photograph in my pocket. But really, Mark, it's just, I faltered, caught between wanting to share and wanting to protect my heart from further disappointment. Just what? He pressed, curiosity knitted into his brow. It's complicated. I finally settled, feeling the weight of all our conflicting emotions like a lead coat. Everything worth living is complicated, Nicey. Just go for it. His practicality grounded me, even as the unease spun in the back of my mind. I guess I just wish it were easier, I confessed, my voice softer, feeling the edges of time sharpen in the corners of my heart without even realizing it. I wanted answers, yet a fear loomed of vulnerability, of loss, and what-ifs that wrapped around my insides like anchored chains. Easier? That'll be the day. Life is hardly a walk in the park, Mark said, a warm smile breaking through. But trust me, the good moments, you'll always remember those. Or, it'll be a total disaster, Sarah joked, flinging her bouquet up in the air, petals scattering like silly confetti. Or a beautiful disaster, I added, a glint of seriousness threading my voice with genuine, playful reflection. Just remember, it takes 2 stars to form a constellation, Mark replied, crossing his arms with the confidence of an amateur philosopher. Now stop brooding and make a move. It was as if I were dangling on the precipice of something vast, something exhilarating, that stole the breath right from my lungs while drawing nearer. Just maybe, I could let Jean in again. Maybe the thrumming in my heart ignited by that photograph wouldn't need to stay hidden anymore. Thanks, you two, I said genuinely, laughter weaving around us like a silken thread, connecting 3 souls in a tapestry of love and longing. As the 3 of us shared laughter, the moment felt almost like an echo of a past I longed to revisit. With plans unfolding, I realized I had to find Jean, ignite the spark, and address the questions that had tangled in my heart for too long. All right, I think it's time I faced my ghosts, I declared, an unexpected buoyancy surging through me. Sarah clapped her hands, bouncing on her toes. Mark nodded with approval, pride shining in his eyes. The laughter and hope in the room felt tender and alive, a reminder that the future stretched out before me, filled with possibilities I hadn't dared to explore until now. And perhaps as I stood on the cusp of those choices, the photograph in my pocket held more than just memories. It carried my intention to carve a new path, rewriting the narrative of both our lives. The potential for rekindled connection felt real, almost electrifying. With the darkness of twilight enveloping the world outside, I stepped toward my next chapter with a resolve that felt both uncertain and brimming, a leap towards reconnection, against all odds. Jean, here I come, I whispered to the twilight sky, my heart flaring with a light I thought had faded, emboldened enough to chase the feelings I had tried so hard to forget. The laughter of my family faded into the background, the turning of a page that may just lead to an unexpected yet electrifying new beginning. Chapter 8, Run-ins with Fate. Do you remember the first time we met? I ask, my voice light, as if I'm floating above the seriousness that permeates the air of our cafe, teeming with the mingling aromas of brewed coffee and fresh pastries. Autumn sunlight filters through the glass facade, casting soft golden hues that dance playfully across the tabletop. I have my hands wrapped around my cup, the ceramic warm against my palms, feeling the gentle tremors of nostalgia beneath my surface. He chuckles, a low, warm sound that resonates between us, hinting at shared recollections. It was in that old science lab, right? You spilled the beakers all over me. My laughter mingles with his, and I can feel the threads of the past weaving us back together, tightly and without hesitation. You still have that jacket? I tease. I was quite infamous for my clumsiness back then. I should have known better than to wear white, he replies, his gaze steady. But it was worth it, if only for the show. We both lean back, enjoying the first time we've spoken in what feels like lifetimes. And yet, for that shared moment, it's as if the years have peeled away, layer by layer, revealing the raw essence of who we were beneath it all. The faint buzz of the cafe fades into a mere hum as we travel back to those bright afternoons, the crackling energy of a high school hall bursting with laughter and insecurities, with every whispered secret clutching at my heart. The weather outside has changed with the seasons, draping the world in fiery reds and golden yellows. It mirrors the conflated emotions continuously churning within me, as unpredictably as the wind that sweeps across the town. I look out the window at a cluster of trees, their leaves fluttering carelessly, yet the chill lingers, a reminder that warmth is easily displaced. How have you been, Jean? The question spirals out, heavy but not intended to weigh down the moment. His smile falters briefly before re-emerging, revealing the softness of his eyes that tells stories I long to hear. Better now that I'm actually seeing you. It's strange, you know. I thought you had vanished from my life altogether. I've been here, living, creating, trying to untangle the mess of things. The honesty pours out before I can reel it back, but looking into him, I realize that honesty feels like liberation. What about you? Are you still painting? His expression transforms, the weight of his untold tales resting on his shoulders as he shifts forward. Yes, but it's been a struggle. Sometimes my brush feels like a sword, hacking at the fear of what it will reveal. As he speaks, I can almost see the brushstrokes dancing in his mind's eye, the colors battling for dominance. The cafe fades as we delve deeper. I see shadows of unsaid achievements and failures swimming behind the bright flicker of nostalgia. Scene break. Somewhere down the street, Charlotte, my best friend and the ever-bubbling embodiment of enthusiasm, sways her way out of a shop, two neon-pink shopping bags balanced triumphantly in her arms. I watch her approach, her dark curls bouncing with each step, a contagious energy radiating from her. Nicey, you won't believe the sale I just found. She beams, eyes sparkling like the baubles hanging from her earlobes. Yet, it's only a moment before her gaze catches mine, and instantaneously she senses the shift in the atmosphere. Her enthusiasm mellows as she marvels at the tension wrapped around Jean and me. Am I interrupting something? She asks, clearly noting the electric atmosphere that belies our casual meeting. Not at all, Jean interjects, his charm intact. I was just hoping to catch up well before the world ends. Charlotte cackles at that, pulling up a chair with a dramatic flourish. Ah, yes, nothing like the imminent downfall of civilization throwing people back together. So, what's the reason behind this, then? I glance at Jean, who meets my eyes with an unspoken understanding. The way he leans forward, casually brushing his fingers against the edge of the cup, seeking words before I take the plunge, feels familiar, even comforting. We met by chance, Charlotte, and it's turned into something more, I say, allowing a moment of playful understatement. We're just reminiscing about our glory days, that's all. She raises an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. Reminiscing? The only reason we reminisce is because we're in denial about how little time we have left. How long is it going to take for you to realize that? Maybe I like the charming denial of it all, I reply, my gaze darting between them. Can't one enjoy the fleeting moments? I prefer to bask in the warmth of truth, Jean says lightly, undeterred. Charlotte then clears her throat dramatically, nearly spilling her iced latte in the process. Well, if you two want to stay in the shadows of what could have been, I won't stop you. But I do have to ask, she leans in, voice conspiratorial, is there a chance that you two are sailing towards love amidst this nostalgic shipwreck? My cheeks heat up, but the teasing in her eyes eases the weight of the question. Jean chuckles again, clearly amused, just as my heart begins to race dangerously against the possibility. Are you saying the past never stays buried, Charlotte? I challenge, knowing there's more to it. Exactly. Look at this lovely reunion. It's practically celestial. She winks at me before nudging Jean. You should really try the new pumpkin bread here. You can thank me later. Scene break. There's something soothing about bodies in motion, and as the cafe buzzes with laughter and clinking cutlery, I can't hold back from stealing glances at Jean. The way he engages with Charlotte, effortlessly balancing banter and sincerity, pulls me deeper into a threadbare warmth I had forgotten existed. Are you still painting? I ask again, wanting him to share more, wanting everything woven into the tapestry of his life. I've tried to, but sometimes the canvas feels like a mirror, reflecting pieces I'd rather keep tucked away. His voice drops, almost as if we're hidden from the rest of the world. It's difficult to prune away the memories that scream for attention. Memories can feel like weeds, lush yet out of place. I nod, caught in the grievance of regret that oftentimes accompanies exploration. Would you show me? Jean lifts his gaze, the corner of his mouth hinting at a smile, yet there's hesitation lurking underneath. You sure you want that? I think there's a part of me that needs to see where you've been. It might help me find my path back to myself. In the silence that follows, he studies me, and I relish the weight of his attention. The air around us crackles with potential, with that very unnameable feeling that comes hand in hand with transparency. Let's leave the door open then. I'll share them with you, if you promise to share your stories too. I laugh lightly. As long as my embarrassing mishaps during chemistry class make the cut. You mean all of them? Touche. I lean back, the sunlight withering slightly, yet warmth envelops me, keeping darkness at bay. The laughter fades into an intimacy that tugs at the heartstrings. It's exhilarating, thrilling, even like chasing whispers in the night as we risk ourselves amid the comfort of shared breaths. His gaze holds me, steady and unflinching. Time drifts as I reflect, not just on the allure of him, but on the connection that is ever so tangible yet undefined. The laughter bubbles beneath, but it holds a weight that both overwhelms and elevates. Kettle drums of my heart thump as our surroundings melt away, leaving just the two of us afloat in a shared nostalgia, an impending journey towards something we can't yet define. Across town, in the crowded downtown, Edward, Jean's estranged brother and the local newspaper's editor, flips through pages of shady gossip about the upcoming gallery showing. He snorts derisively at the audacity of some pieces, clearly the work of amateurs without an ounce of understanding about the art world. As he glances out the window, he sighs, contemplating whether his brother ever even considers the turmoil he leaves in his wake. The dinner debacle from last month still sits in his gut, thick as fog, and now the thought of Jean rekindling old flames sends a ripple of irritation through him. Good for him, I suppose. Edward mutters to himself in the shifting shadows of the empty office. For now, he fiddles with papers, marking items to be tossed into the fire of his frustration, a mix of brotherly jealousy and disappointment. Let's see how long those flames burn before the sky falls down. Nicey. Jean's voice pulls me back. I'm nestled deep within the labyrinth of thoughts. He leans closer, his rich cologne warring with the sweet aroma of coffee. I want to walk this path with you, if you'll let me. It's daring and heartfelt, an invitation to dive as deeply as the past will allow. The honesty surges forth, warm and consuming. There's something simmering, brewing between us, a possibility too tempting to resist, yet one that feels perilously close to the edge. Then let's unfold those layers together. Let's strip the vines, I respond, my heart racing faster than my thoughts. A spark ignites in his eyes, igniting the tension, a silent agreement, an unvowed promise that trails behind us as our laughter flickers out like the last rays of sunlight through a window at dusk. Just as our fingers brush over the edge of this burgeoning realization, the air hums with something spectacularly charged. As if the universe conspired, the earth beneath starts shifting, and in that monumental moment, a kiss spreads through the delicate gap. It's filled with uncertainty and yearning. Soft and warm against the chill of regret, a quiet promise that's kept safe within the realms of what could be. And then, the world fades to black, leaving nothing but that lingering connection, echoing with the whispers of fate guiding our steps forward, however uncertain that path might be. As the air cools, I can't help but think, sometimes it's those fleeting moments that turn into solid truths. Chapter 9. The Call That Changes Everything. The call came on a drizzly Thursday morning, the kind where the sky weeps in soft, muted tones, and I found myself peering out my kitchen window with a cup of tea warming my hands. The clink of the bone china against the counter echoed in the stillness, blending with the distant rhythmic tapping of rain against glass. It was more melancholy than morose, and quite befitting of my own introspection as I stewed in the memories of yesteryear, trying to sift through the rubble of my ambitions and the love that had fled long ago. When my phone rang, I initially dismissed it, some telemarketer, no doubt. As the fifth ring echoed into the atlas of my thoughts, I picked it up, half braced for disappointment, half caught in nostalgia. But the moment I saw his name flash on the screen, Jean Fabian, my heart performed a curious somersault in my chest. I had wondered for years if our paths would cross again, and here it was, a concrete possibility clinging to the edges of my day like the fog that wrapped around candlelit streets. Nicey? His voice pulled me in, deep and textured like the well-worn pages of a book. It had been decades, yet it felt both oddly familiar and achingly foreign. Jean, it's been a while, I replied, my voice a blend of slight amusement laced with vulnerability, a tone I could neither mask nor diminish. Far too long, he said, a hint of warmth igniting through the phone line. I could hear the faint crackle of static, like the unpredictable sparks of connection that had brought us together so many lives ago. How is life treating you? I asked, unsure if I was prepared to discuss anything deeper than casual pleasantries. Busy, he replied, and I could picture him, standing beside a window, a blur of a man in a blazer and struggle against life's mundane tribulations. You'd think at 62 there'd be a reprieve, but I chuckled lightly, the sound feeling more genuine than I had expected. Life knows how to keep us on our toes. True enough, he agreed. What about you? I paused, thoughts swirling like the clouds outside. I've been, but words abandoned me. Hadn't I spent years trying to create a facade of joy and success? It felt almost sacrilegious to admit the truth. I'm navigating, as always. I remember you always said that you hated stagnancy, he interjected, his voice imbued with genuine interest. What about your gallery? Still thriving? It dawned on me then. Jean had always been the one to celebrate my ambitions, challenging me to rise above. It is, I concede, my eyes momentarily capturing the splintering light that fought through the dreary clouds. But sometimes it feels like an uphill battle. Silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of our shared past. I could almost hear him grappling with his thoughts, wondering, perhaps, what had fallen through the cracks over all these years. I was struck by how one call could wield the potential to shift the entire landscape of my memory. Nicey, if I'm being honest, he started, his voice soft with caution, I've thought about what we had. Jean, we were kids, I interrupted, unable to let the unspoken lead us to a chasm of nostalgia that threatened to swallow me whole. We were idealistic, naive. Maybe, but our feelings were real, he countered, his tone rising just slightly, resonating with the passion that still clung to our history. The way we connected, it mattered, still matters. My breath caught. Did he really think so? I could make out his earnestness through the phone, resonating deep within the crevices of long-buried affection and trust, and yet I felt raw, pained, my defenses flaring. And what precisely do you want from me, Jean? A stroll down memory lane? A second chance? My sarcasm fell flat. I want to understand, he replied, firm and precise. I took a breath, the air laden with uncertainties. Understand what exactly? You and me, it's complicated. We both know that. But hidden behind all that complexity is something beautiful. My heart skipped, colliding against the walls I'd erected. His words summoned forth a tide of memories, every shared glance, laughter at midnight, whispers in hallways. And how do you propose we unravel that beauty amidst the chaos of our lives? I challenged, though inside a flicker of hope ignited. Could it be ignited again? How naive of me to consider it. Maybe we start by being honest with ourselves, he suggested, his sincerity disarming. And maybe, if we both want to see where this can go, we can open the door to something new. As I stared into the depths of my tea, swirling the liquid as if it could summon clarity, my thoughts were interrupted by my younger sister's entrance. Lila burst into the kitchen, her blonde hair catching the muted sunlight streaming through the window. Hey, Nicey, you will not believe the sale I just... She paused, catching my gaze locked onto the phone, confusion contorting her face. Wait, who is that? She leaned over, propping her chin on her palm, curious yet supportive. I pressed the phone tighter against my ear, the the warmth of Jean's voice solidifying my resolve. Jean, I need to. But it was clear there was someone else in the room, someone present to witness the tangled web of emotions. Lila's eyes narrowed. Is that Jean? She mouthed. I shushed her, her red-haired exclamations cut short as she wiggled her eyebrows. With a hasty motion, I exited the kitchen, uncertainty tinging my each step as I darted to the living room. Yeah, it's complicated. Complicated is an understatement, he chuckled softly. And yet, here we are. Here we are, I echoed, feeling the weight of our words collide with a future cloaked in uncertainty. Outside, the rain intensified, a beautiful collision of nature that reflected the storm brewing within me. Nicey, can we meet? Jean's question hung in the air, a promise sparkling with the potential of rekindling. My heart raced, struggling against the pull of my own reservations. Meet? After all these years? I pondered aloud, the idea pitching itself against the walls of my mind, leaving imprints that would be bitter to erase. He hesitated, the rawness of his feelings spilling through the line. I think we owe it to ourselves. Suddenly, the storm shifted, a warmth spreading through me, ignited by promises of honesty and connection. What do you think you'll find, Jean? I asked softly. He didn't seem to falter. You and me, how we fit, what this all means. At that moment, an unexpected wave of vulnerability washed over me. I found myself feeling not just desire, but a longing for connection. All right, I whispered, unable to disguise the tremor in my voice. Let's find that out. Tomorrow, he suggested, amusement teasing his voice. Meet me at that little cafe we used to love. I breathed a silent laugh. You mean the one where you embarrassed yourself trying to order coffee? Hey, I've only embarrassed myself approximately 3 times since then. Maybe I'm your lucky charm. I couldn't help it. Laughter bubbled up, lightening the tension woven through our words. Oh, Jean, you wish. Tomorrow, then. Remember, at the cafe, he said firmly, his tone a comforting balm, anchoring us both in the reliability of shared memories. Tomorrow, I repeated, resolve fortifying the corners of my heart. As the call ended, I stood alone in the living room, Lila still lingering in the doorway. She raised an eyebrow as if scrutinizing the very essence of my soul. So what's the plan? I met her gaze, a smile growing unbidden on my lips as apprehension and excitement danced within. I'm not quite sure, but it feels like a beginning. Lila crossed her arms, her expression a portrait of delightful intrigue. A beginning to what? A beginning to everything. The sky cleared slightly, a soft lull in the rain matching the cadence of my heart, a promise lingering in the air that tomorrow, maybe just tomorrow, would change everything. Chapter 10. Promises of the Past. Standing in the quiet chaos of my kitchen, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with lingering traces of burnt toast clung to the air, wrapping around me like an old, familiar cloak. Every morning, I had a routine prescribed, almost ritualistic. But this morning felt different. Perhaps it was the lingering taste of Jean Fabian's laughter from our conversation just the evening prior, or perhaps it was the unwelcome stir of memories I had tucked away long ago. I poured the steaming coffee into my favorite chipped mug, its handle slightly crooked but comforting. As I cradled the mug between my trembling hands, flashes of Jean flickered in my mind. His smile, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he least expected to be happy, and how that shared connection between us managed to dance on the razor's edge of intimacy and fear. He had promised me once decades ago that he would be there. But promises left unfulfilled can tether us to more than nostalgia. They can shackle us to our past, no matter how hard we try to shake loose. Nicey, I called, more to myself than anyone else. The elongated echo of my voice reminded me of the emptiness brewing next to the coffee pot. The living room stood modestly cluttered with old magazines and scattered community flyers. They all spoke of a life that was supposed to be so much simpler, filled with dinner parties and unhurried laughter, yet here I was, an island unto myself. As luck would have it, the doorbell rang, jolting me from my contemplation. My heart raced a little more than it should have. Could it be Jean again? I glanced at the clock. It was too early for a social visit. But leveling my rhythm, I reminded myself that anticipation was only a choice. Opening the door, there stood Helen, my neighbor, with her sun hat tilted at a jaunty angle. She had the strong, weathered hands of someone who had spent a lifetime growing herbs and homemade delights in her tiny backyard garden. She was a whirlwind of energy, her eyes sparkling like the early morning sun. "Nicey, have you tried my new scones?" she gushed, handing me a small platter. It was decorated whimsically with lavender and adorned in what could only be described as Helen's uncanny ability to make the mundane deliciously charming. "Only if you promise me a cup of that herbal tea," I countered, grabbing a scone and leaning against the doorframe. My heart was still dancing with beat. Part of me was waiting for Jean's familiar figure to appear down the block. "Oh, darling, you know I indulge you for those requests," she joked, ushering herself in as if she owned half the space. "So what's stirring today? You've been positively glowing since your reunion, or shall I say, rekindling." The shift of conversation made me shiver slightly. I attempted to keep my laughter light as I led her to the kitchen table. "You mean walking down memory lane with a vintage model?" I teased while rummaging for teacups. "And it's not exactly a rekindling, maybe more like a furnace reigniting." Helen's laugh was unfiltered. "Oh, but don't you think it deserves a little fire? We all like the thrill of something blazing and unexpected." With the kettle whistling, I turned my focus back to the task at hand. The boiling water hissed angrily as I poured it into the teapot, unable to shake a rising knot of apprehension in my stomach. How does one explain decades of good intentions and worse mistakes? Memories of the past, like dust bunnies under the couch, sprang to the forefront. Promises made in the humid heat of youthful passions, expectations that had settled like an unwelcome fog. Before I could quench that unsettling feeling with a sip of tea, I caught a glimpse of Jean running past my window, panting as though he were in the middle of a marathon. My heart quickened at this unexpected sight. The reality he inspired in me was a chaotic mixture of fear and delight. It was that very tension that kept the promise of the past tangled in my thoughts, a secret I kept cherished yet burdensome. Helen, capable as always, seemed to pick up on my shift and held the plate steady. "Tell me everything, Nicey. You can't hide behind scones and tea forever." Instead of answering her directly, I let silence stretch, allowing the fluttering heaviness to fill the space. And then, as if fate had conspired one too many times, Jean knocked gently at the door. His arrival was marked by the familiar rattle of keys dropped on the table, transforming the kitchen into an impatient stew. "Ah, nice timing. We're just discussing your infamous charm," Helen announced, missing the subtle shift in Jean's expression. He didn't note the jest. He was instead processing his own feelings in that moment. "Well, I wouldn't call it infamous. Perhaps notorious fits better," Jean replied with that inviting grin that still made my heart flutter. "Notorious and charming sounds like a novel character if I ever heard one." Helen replied, pulling into the vibrant energy of our reunion effortlessly. But inside me, old hurts began to stitch themselves together as we fell into easy banter over tea and scones. In every joke exchanged, there was an undercurrent of tension between Jean and me. An unsaid agreement loomed over our heads like a thundercloud in an otherwise sunny sky. And as soon as Helen took her leave, the laughter would fade, replaced by the weight of the promise I had suppressed. Once the door was closed, I turned to find Jean leaning against the kitchen's worn table, the sunlight gilding his silver hair. "I didn't want to interrupt a moment," he offered, crossing his arms as if attempting to shield himself from unspoken truths. "Good thing you have a talent for making unexpected entrances," I said softly, unable to hold back a creeping warmth. We were both lost, trudging through memories in search of something we weren't yet ready to reveal. "Thought I might drop by. You know, a little coffee and talk?" "Or maybe the start of an ancient promise," I replied, challenging the very air between us. As we shared heated glances, I found myself driven closer, a palpable force pulling us together, whispering reminders of shared histories and old regrets. What happens when promises weigh more than time? I hesitated, hovering on the brink of vulnerability. Jean's expression shifted, the crinkles of his brow deepening as memories washed over him. "We carry them, don't we?" he answered, and his voice softened, coating the air with something electric, something that demanded acknowledgement. "Sometimes they carry us right back." The kitchen felt tighter somehow, filled with fragrances of chamomile and lavender mingling with unresolved tension. I wasn't sure how to pinpoint where it began, this delicate dance we were enacting. But as he drew closer, I could almost feel the gravity pulling me forward into the arms of a shared recollection, something rich, complex, as vibrant as a summer's day. Before I could second-guess myself, I reached for his hand, letting our fingers interlace in an unguarded moment. The touch ignited a river of warmth, flowing into all the unspoken thoughts I had consciously evaded. "Jean," I started softly, a tremor creeping into my voice. "What do we do with this? All these years, those lost promises." He leaned in, eyes earnest and searching. "All we can do is decide if they matter enough to us to fight for them." In that heartbeat of silence, amid the clanking of old dishes and the smell of sweet pastries, I felt the weight of a choice: to delve deeper into our shared histories, light and shadow intermixed, or to flee from the emotions brewing around us. And just as the kitchen felt alive, electrified with possibilities, I braved the plunge that could change everything. "Do you want to share our scars?" I asked, surprising even myself with the rawness threading through my words. His thumb brushed along the back of my hand, and it sent shivers coursing down my spine. "Nothing would make me happier," he whispered, and there, between the untouched remnants of burnt toast and fragrant tea, a new promise hung in the air. The kitchen may have been cluttered, but at that moment, it was our world, a space for truths and hopes. Could we redefine our promises, evolve past our wounds? And as the afternoon light shifted and deepened, I could only hope destiny had a role in this rekindling, in the beautiful complexity woven from shared scars and future dreams. As he drew nearer, nestled within the intimacy of that heartbeat, I let the moment envelop me, feeling the fabric of my past morphing, stitch by stitch, into something beautifully unexpected. "Let's find out together," I offered, my heart racing with the exhilaration of the leap. And with that, the dance resumed in its delicate cadence, as uncharted territory lay before us, armed only with hope and intertwined promises. Chapter 11. Shadows of Doubt. The late afternoon sun slanted through the half-open kitchen blinds, bathing the room in a dappled glow. I stood at the counter, my fingers tracing the catch of old recipes I hadn't touched in years. The scent of rosemary and thyme wafted gently from a pot simmering on the stove, grounding me momentarily amidst swirling thoughts. Cooking always felt like a nurture. Maybe I could whisk up something comforting to ease the chatter gnawing inside me. Yet each stir, each sizzle, only deepened the gnawing sensation that had made itself a constant companion worry. Jean's recent silence grew heavier as the days passed, its weight deepening with unspoken promises and lingering glances. He was here, yet so far. I could feel the nuances of our conversations, sharing light jokes and half-hearted nostalgia, as if they were threaded through a fog, never quite cutting through the haze of doubt. I couldn't shake off the memory of our last meeting. Jean had laughed, an easy, rolling sound that had filled the cafe with warmth. But right now, that vitality seemed like a faint echo, and something about his demeanor that day raked at my chest like a briar. He'd hesitated too long before answering my questions, shifting his gaze as though the truth were an intruder he could not bear to welcome. "Dinner in 20?" I called out, feigning cheer but mindful that my voice wavered. I hadn't yet seen him today, too wrapped up in my own anxious thoughts since dawn. The chime of the microwave gave an affirmative answer, and with quickening strides, I headed into the dining room to set the table. That's when I heard the front door creak open. I turned my head just as Jean slipped inside, tousled hair and a well-worn jacket, giving him an air of easy grace. A captivating charm tangled with something nameless. I could tell he carried the world upon his shoulders slumping slightly with gravity. "Hey," he said softly, a crooked smile on his face. My heart ached at the sight. How could he still light up the room even when shadows clouded his eyes? His hands were jammed into his pockets, a habit I had noticed whenever he was on guard. "Hey, yourself," I replied, striving for nonchalance. "Dinner will be ready soon. I thought I'd whip up something special, nothing like a bit of comfort food, right?" "Right," he murmured, but the enthusiasm in his voice fell flat. The air felt tense, thick with the unsaid. I busied myself with plating the steaming pasta, intentionally avoiding his gaze. He slid into a chair at the table, sitting a bit too far away. I sensed a myriad of emotions whirling around between us. Just as dinner was ready to be served, the doorbell rang, slicing through the weight between us. Distracted, I glanced up, startled. "Expecting someone?" Gene asked, a hint of surprise coloring his tone. "No, just me, in my kitchen, pretending to be a gourmet chef," I quipped lightly, though my heart pounded. I wasn't prepared for interruptions, least of all from the outside world. Couldn't we have one evening free from the encroaching chaos of our lives? I went to answer the door, desperately trying to mask my simmering anxiety. On the doorstep stood Angela, my childhood friend, tall and brimming with energy. Her presence felt like a whirlwind as she entered. "Nicey, just thought I'd stop by. I brought wine." She waved a bottle like a baton, forcing a smile on my face. "Hey, Angela, didn't think we were having guests," I murmured, glancing back toward Jean. "Hi, Jean." She lifted her palm in a wave, oblivious to the silence pressing on us like a solid wall. Her excitement felt almost intrusive, but I couldn't blame her enthusiasm. "Evening," he replied, leaning back in his chair, but still feeling distant, like those half-open blinds keeping the warmth at bay. As Angela settled in, bustling around the kitchen corner, pouring the wine, I observed Jean's expression morph from slightly puzzled to, was that annoyance? His fingers tapped on the table, a staccato rhythm rising with each moment as the conversation drifted toward Angela's tales of mingling charity events and local gossip. "Looks like the two of you are in cahoots," she chimed, her eyes darting between us, tantalized by the tension. "What secrets are you hiding, huh?" "No secrets here," I said too quickly, stirring my pasta nervously. I glanced at Jean, whose jaw was lined with a tension that mirrored my own. "Is that so?" Angela pressed, tilting her head. "Seems to me that all the juicy stuff comes out eventually." "Maybe you're just fishing for scandal," Jean shot back, a smirk tinting his lips, though I could see the flicker of discomfort in his gaze. "Who, me? Never," Angela shot back with mock innocence. "But I do think there's something brewing like that pot on the stove." The laughter that followed hung in the air long enough to feel like a break in the tension. Dinner unfolded, but not in the usual familiar warmth. I caught fleeting glances from Jean, his lips curling as if deciding whether to smile or to frown. "You know, you could have called if you wanted to come over," he said, his tone imperative yet teasing as Angela regaled us with her wild stories. "Why call? I figured a surprise would liven things up. Clearly, it worked." She leaned back in her chair, triumph etched on her face. I rolled my eyes, wishing I could retract her buoyancy. It was no surprise that Jean felt cornered. This was not the evening we had imagined, and certainly not the moment I craved for the two of us to reconnect. My peace of mind was fraying. "Just hold your thoughts for a sec, Angela," I finally interrupted, struggling to maintain my calm. "Let's finish dinner before we start chasing mountains of drama." She raised an eyebrow but acquiesced, her playful demeanor turning momentarily serious. The rest of our meal passed, filled with half-hearted jokes and waning laughter. Jean seemed more preoccupied than before, staring down at his empty plate as though searching for answers buried among the remnants. "Got any desserts lined up?" Angela pried at one point, jabbing at the tension that lurked beneath the surface. "Something sweet always helps," I replied, masking my feelings in a layer of bravado. "Sweet," Jean muttered, his jaw tightening again in that familiar clench. "Let's hope that's not all we're facing tonight." His words hung heavy, a reminder of the unaddressed. I couldn't hold the tautness in the room anymore. It needed to burst. "What are you saying, Jean?" I challenged gently, setting my fork down. His gaze flicked to me, then to Angela, a battlefield of indecision. "I just mean, sometimes the light doesn't last. Everything feels so fragile." His hand reached out slightly, brushing against mine before retreating, leaving the air electrified and the words unsaid. Angela's laughter interrupted, nudging into the space where confessions and whispered tension should have thrived. "Ah, come on, life's too short for all this seriousness. You two need to loosen up." There was urgency in her tone, but I sensed it was fear. I wasn't ready for any more light-hearted distractions. I shrugged off her comments, but Jean's expression remained grave. The light-hearted exchange hung tenuously. Angela's spontaneity bled the emotional landscape of the moment. As she continued her tales, I caught Jean's gaze again, and this time I held it, willing him to engage, to find his way back from whatever shadows clung to him. The storytelling drifted on like currents, but these were shallow waters, never delving into the truth. As Angela laughed, oblivious to the silent storm brewing around us, Gene leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You can't just ignore it, Nicey." My pulse quickened. He was pushing against that carefully erected wall. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. His brows furrowed as though he were plotting the course of a ship through treacherous waters. "I mean us. There's something simmering here, yet it's being boiled with a cover on. Maybe that's what we all need, a little simmering." I fastened the sarcasm like armor, but Jean's steady gaze pierced through it. "Loosen up, you two." Angela cheered, but in her laughter I could hear the fragility. As dinner wound down and Angela finally took her leave, I was left in the din of unresolved emotions. The remnants of flourishes and camaraderie faded like the last light before nightfall. Jean lingered at the table for a moment, watching the door close behind her before turning back to face me, his expression softer now. "Nicey," his voice was low, a reverence shadowing the night. "Jean, let's not dance around this. Whatever you're feeling, let's address it." He held my gaze, his hands gently resting against the table. "It's just, do you think this can endure? The promises, the weight of regrets, secrets, the past?" My voice trembled, slicing through the emotional facade. "What else is there? What if I'm not enough?" His words tumbled as if he were casting them out to see whether a lifeboat awaited. I could have collapsed under the weight of his vulnerability, but instead, I stepped closer. "You are enough, Jean, but I'm not going to sugarcoat either of us. We have to face what lies ahead." A fleeting silence passed between us, brushing against my skin like a cool breeze. As I reached out, letting my fingers trace the outline of his square wrist, a spark ignited, a flicker of reassurance coiled around the doubt. In this moment, we were cocooned from the outside world. "Let's not wait for sweetness to drive this conversation," I whispered, the intimacy of the night wrapping tightly around us. His lips brushed against mine, tentative yet charged, an electric promise suspended between us, fragrant with rosemary and lingering regrets. "Let's own our truth," he murmured against my skin, finally daring to tread the murky waters together. It was messy. It was uncertain, but beneath the ephemeral shadows of doubt, could we still hope for something like light? Chapter 12. Jealous Hearts. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across my kitchen table, I stirred my cup of coffee absent-mindedly, the spoon clinking gently against the porcelain. The familiarity of the action should have brought comfort, but instead, anxiety twisted inside me like a vine around a fence, unruly and suffocating. My gaze drifted out the window, catching the glimmers of the rippling lake beyond the trees. It was beautiful. But everything felt complicated. The beauty was a serene layer hiding the tempest brewing within me. Jeanette's laughter echoed through the house, breaking my reverie. I had invited her and a few other friends over for brunch. I thought it would be a light-hearted distraction, a balm for the burgeoning confusion about Jean and our fragile reconnection. However, even as I stirred my coffee, I could feel the tension in the air. The truth was, my friends were skeptical about Jean. "Nicey, do we need to stage an intervention?" Jeanette shouted from the living room, her voice teasing, yet underpinned by truth. "Because it seems like you've forgotten how to be single. I'd expect a love letter from a high school crush, but dinner reservations? Come on." Her laughter rang out again, but the way her eyes sparkled told me she was serious. I set my cup down and stood, grabbing the remnants of the fruit salad instead. "You know how it is," I said, forcing a smile. "Some bonds don't just disappear." "Or some foolish notions don't just linger," interjected Marlene, her tone sharp. She was a steady voice of reason, always willing to ground our dreams in practicality, unlike the other ladies, who often embraced the whims of love. "Nicey, think about it. You two haven't seen each other in decades. It's nostalgic, not reality." "Yeah," chimed in Lily, her animated blonde curls bouncing as she leaned forward. "Just look how high your standards have dropped. You were so particular before." She pretended to adjust her glasses, striking a faux scholarly pose. "Now it's like, oh, Jean, he once kissed me in a rainstorm? Marry me." As they all chuckled, the warmth of laughter faded before it reached me. The giggles twisted in a knot of panic in my chest. Jeanette, sensing the change, softened slightly. Nicey, we just want to protect you. She leaned forward, her brow furrowing in concern. You've been through so much. Last thing you need is old ghosts coming back. But Gene wasn't a ghost. He was a man who'd tiptoed through my memories, his shadow marking me deeper than I had ever realized. The truth, raw and painful, slithered against my heart. He's different now. We're different, I replied, but my voice faltered. People change. Yet, even as my friends swirled their doubts around me like storm clouds, I felt a fierce longing to defend him. You don't understand, I pressed. He's not just a memory. There's something real here, something worth exploring. Be careful, Nicey, Marlene cautioned, her voice low and steady. You have to ensure he's the person you remember, not just the person you've built up in your head. But how could I articulate the way his laughter had filled the empty spaces inside me? How could I convey the resonance of his presence when he looked at me? I felt raw and exposed, a flower held too long in the sun, my petals yearning for shade. You don't give him a fair chance, I snapped, the words slipping out like a snapping twig betraying its brittle state. The room plunged into a heavy silence, the air thick with electric tension. Jeanette recovered first, tilting her head, pretending to analyze me with playful mockage. Gee, someone's got a twig in their shorts, she teased lightly, breaking the heaviness, but her eyes held concern. We just worry, that's all. As I opened my mouth to argue further, something about Jeanette's expression shifted. Beneath that teasing exterior lay genuine fondness, and suddenly I glimpsed how much they cared for me. It was a sensation both warming and constricting, an embrace that held me back but also called me home. The moment hung in the air, fragile and heavy, until the sound of excited chatter reverberated from outside. I turned just in time to see Gene saunter into my yard, a sunlit apparition with that familiar lopsided grin. The spell of my friend's doubts crumbled slightly at the sight of him. Fruit salad, he called out as he passed the window, a playful wink caught in the sunlight. I felt my breath catch unexpectedly, that simple gesture igniting a warmth inside me. Look who's here, I said, an involuntary flush rising to my cheeks. Gene raised his hand in greeting and strolled over to join us at the table, blissfully unaware of the tension thrumming just beneath the surface. Wonderful day for brunch. Want to join the ladies, or should I sneak something for ourselves? He suggested, his amber eyes sparkling. Please, ripped back Jeanette. Just don't ruin our party with your bad jokes. Oh, come on, my jokes aren't bad. What's the word I'm looking for? Hilarious, he replied, leaning back into a chair with exaggerated nonchalance. The room erupted with laughter, our earlier tension dispersing like fog under midday sun. But I could see the undercurrents swirling beneath the humor. Marlene shot me an arched brow and whispered, If he ruins brunch, we're holding you responsible. I'd intended to defend him further, but as I watched him interact, I felt the warmth of affection stir, dulled slightly by the doubts still spinning. He's charming, I'll give him that, I muttered to myself. Look at you two. How cute, Jeanette teased, throwing a cocktail napkin at us like it was a piece of confetti. So where's the romantic date? Let me get my phone to take a picture. Gene laughed heartily, leaning closer to me, our shoulders almost touching. No pictures. I'm too pretty. Would you like to remain the jealous ex who can't take a hint? Who says I'm jealous? I shot back, mirth creeping into the edges of my voice. My heart raced, and the air grew thick with something else, something electric. He quirked an eyebrow, the playful tension pulling taut between us. Well, you're the one still tied to an old memory, aren't you? Why don't you embrace some spontaneity? Why don't you? I retorted lightly, but I could feel my defenses softening. He was charming indeed, but charm was layered with intent, and the longer I sat there, the more I feared uncovering truths too painful to face. Enough sparring. Jeanette, tell us your vacation horror story, Gene encouraged, shifting focus, but the moment lingered, one of those fragile moments pregnant with possibilities. As Jeanette recounted her misadventures, I felt the ripple of jealous glances from my friends, their eyes narrowing as they scrutinized our chemistry. When Gene suggested exploring the nearby trails together later, I hesitated, the hesitance a prelude to my swirling doubts. I'll have to check my schedule, I said too quickly, the words escaping like leaves falling haphazardly in autumn. His smile faltered, the underlying spark dampening slightly. But he quickly masked it, the grin returning, even if it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I get it. Exploring is overrated," he said lightly, but there was a flicker of disappointment behind his words. A weight settled between us, and I felt the urgency build, my friends watching intently, and their skepticism wrapping around us like a constraining vine. Just as Jean leaned closer, a whispered invitation, a spark igniting the space between us, my phone buzzed violently on the table, shattering the intimate connection we'd been forming. "Great. Who's interrupting our moment?" Jeanette quipped, eyeing me with knowing exasperation as I fumbled to pick it up. It was a reminder of the outside world, the weighty responsibilities pulling at me. I stared at the call from my job, the anxiety returning. "Work," I mumbled, frustration lacing my voice. "Put it on silent. More brunch, less drama." Marlene chimed in gently, and I felt that comforting push from my friends, an anchoring I desperately needed. I laughed despite myself, but the echo of tension still clung to the air. As the laughter receded and brunch wore on, I glanced at Jean, who was conversing effortlessly with the others. I saw fleeting glimpses of the man I used to know and the one he had become, both compelling yet increasingly complex. I could sense the unpicking of all the threads binding me to my past, weaving through the intricate fabric of our connection. Then, as the light danced through the kitchen, illuminating us all in a golden haze, I felt an unexpected shift, a surge of vulnerability. The weight of my doubts hung heavy, but at that moment, against the backdrop of the laughter and shared memories, I whispered to myself a quiet truth. Love, if given the chance, could heal burdens too old to bear. "Fine, let's hike later, but you have to promise to be charming." I finally relented, my heart drifting into a hopeful beat. "Always," Jean replied, self-assured and magnetic. Yet, as my laughter joined the others, the seeds of doubt still buried deep in my thoughts. Would love conquer all, or would old promises suffocate what could be? Each lingering glance felt like a beckoning, the distance between us an uncharted territory, a path I was both ready and terrified to traverse. "Let's see if you can keep that promise," I challenged, half joking yet striking a deeper chord within me. The unresolved yearning inside tugged, pulling me closer into the unknown. But as the laughter continued, vibrating around the table, I couldn't shake the feeling that some stories, some choices, might still harbor ghosts of their own. And I could only hope that when the time came, I would have the courage to face them. Chapter 13. Facing the Truth. The rain had begun to fall, its rhythmic tapping a hushed melody against the tin roof of my small kitchen. I stood over the stove, stirring a pot of gazpacho. The vibrant tomatoes and peppers swirled into a rich, tangy concoction that mirrored my stormy emotions. It was a dish that felt simple, yet I poured my heart into it, just like I had poured my heart into so many aspects of my life. Chopped cilantro was ready and waiting on the counter, its fresh, green scent layering the air with a bright optimism I dared not feel today. As the steam curled up into the air, I found my thoughts straying, inevitably, to Jean. Our encounters over the past few weeks had been electric, charged with shared history and the flickering hope of rekindled affection. Every laugh, every lingering glance had illuminated parts of me I thought had dimmed with time. Yet here I was, questioning everything. I glanced at the clock. He was late. The electric rush of anticipation twisted my stomach into knots. The more I thought about him, the closer I came to unraveling the tightly wound ball of yarn my heart had become. I turned off the burner, letting the silence envelop me, punctuated only by the occasional drip from the window. When Jean finally arrived, it was almost poetic. The door creaked open, and he stepped in, shaking the rain from his hair, droplets sparkling against the lamplight like scattered stars. His cobalt blue shirt clung to him, the fabric damp and revealing the contours of his frame. He met my gaze, and for a breathless moment, a kaleidoscope of emotions washed over us. "Nicey," he said, his voice smooth and steady, yet tinged with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "The scent of your cooking is irresistible." I gestured toward the pot, forcing a smile as though it could mask the intertwining feelings of longing and unease stirring within me. "Just gazpacho. Nothing special." He moved closer, the warmth radiating from him not only a contrast to the chilly air, but also a reminder of the magnetic pull between us. I could almost feel the unspoken words hanging in the air like thick fog. As we settled into my tiny dining nook, the careful preparations and playful banter turned electric, each glance, each smile, layered with a depth I hadn't expected. We shared stories, laughter bubbling up like the fizzling of champagne, yet it was Jean's eyes that held my gaze. There was something darker, something weighty behind their vibrant hue, and I sensed it pulling at the corners of our evening, the hush of a secret waiting to unfurl. "So, what's this I hear about a promise?" I asked, my voice little more than a whisper veiled in bravado. I hadn't intended to pry, but the question popped out like a champagne cork escaping its bottle. Jean faltered, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Who told you?" "A little bird. You know how gossip flutters around." I fiddled with my napkin, feeling the tension build like pressure in a balloon. He took a deep breath, his expression shifting to one of cautious resolve. "Nicey, it's complicated." "Complicated like the gazpacho? Or complicated like life and death?" His jaw tightened, fingers drumming on the table as he considered his words. "It was a promise I made long ago, a commitment that complicated my life in ways I never anticipated." "Complicated how? What did you promise?" My heart raced, each beat echoing the anticipation of his revealing something monumental. "Promise to a friend," he began, his voice low and heavy. He was battling demons that eventually overtook him. I swore I would uphold his legacy, his dreams. The weight of his words curled around me, squeezing tight like the embrace of winter. I searched his eyes, hoping to find clarity, but all I saw were lingering shadows. "What does that mean for us, Jean? Is your loyalty to him stronger than what's brewing between us?" He hesitated, and it felt as though the air between us thickened, a dam built on promises and regrets threatening to break. "It means I've made sacrifices. It means—" He paused, the storm's rhythm outside intensifying. "It means I can't let go of that part of me, not yet." The heaviness settled, pushing us both back. I could hear the tick-tock of the wall clock, the silences in the room growing deeper, until it felt like they could swallow me whole. I leaned back, fingers brushing against the intricate fabric of the tablecloth, as I stared at him, uncertain and desperate for understanding. "Jean," I said carefully, "you need to decide what matters more, the past or the future." He leaned forward, anguish etched into every line of his face. "I never wanted to hurt you, Nicey. I thought I was doing the right thing for him." Something twisted inside me, the disappointment mingled with the tenderness I still clung to. "But now, right now, I want to be here with you," he admitted, his honesty radiating a warmth that threatened to thaw the icy barriers I wrapped around my heart. I opened my mouth, desperate to say the right words, to ease the tension born of my own bewilderment. "Then let's face it together." But as the words spilled out, the shadow of his promise loomed larger. He remained silent, the unbroken silence stretching until it felt unbearable. I watched him, the way his fortitude wavered, and my heart broke for both of us. "Maybe we need time. Space," I suggested slowly, though every letter of that thought felt heavy on my tongue. The flash of hurt in his gaze nearly severed my resolve. "You want to put this on hold? After everything we've shared?" "Not everything can be rushed," I replied, each syllable punctuated by the intensity of my emotions. "I'm afraid of losing you to a promise made in a different life when we're both trying to navigate this one." He looked away, scanning the wall with an intensity that matched the echo of my heart. The rain continued to pound outside, the world beyond blurring into streaks of gray. "Maybe I'm afraid too," he finally confessed. His words were a whisper, heavy yet light, a paradox that felt like a confession of love laced with uncertainty. The room hung in suspension, our gazes locking. I rose from my seat, moving toward him, each step weighted with the unspoken words that lingered in the air. I reached for his hand, fingertips grazing his palm, and I felt the warmth electrify the space between us. "Jean," I started, but instead of words, I found myself sliding onto his lap, my heart racing in proximity. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, as if to shield me from the tempest raging outside and within. "Nicey," his voice was thick with the unsaid, and the world around us faded until only we remained. As I leaned in, our lips met softly. It was a hesitant kiss, a coming together that felt as though every broken promise, every forgotten dream, could still be rewritten in the language of our longing. There was a gentleness in it, an emotional crescendo building within each gentle caress. And for just a heartbeat, the chaos receded into stillness. Time slipped away, the kiss deepening as we navigated uncharted waters together. Layers peeled back like the skin of an onion, revealing the sweetness hidden within the lingering bitterness. For a moment, it felt as if all of our intertwined years, the laughter, the pain, the distance, had led us here. That this moment of intimacy might transcend the promises of the past and seal a new commitment to forging ahead. Then, with an unrelenting hang of the seconds that followed, I pulled away, breathless, yet grounded in a reality that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "I can't promise you anything," he murmured, but the vulnerability in his voice hinted that perhaps we could find a way through this chaos together after all. "Let's figure it out. Just please, don't shut me out again." He gazed into my eyes, filled with a tumult of emotions, hope, fear, yearning. "I won't, I promise." And in that moment, as the rain continued to fall, I dared to believe again, even as shadows loomed on the horizon. Chapter 14, Spontaneous Adventure. "Is this really the way you want to spend your birthday?" Jean's voice hung in the air, a mix of challenge and concern, the kind that pulled at me while simultaneously igniting old, hidden tensions. We stood by the gate of my apartment complex, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over the cracked pavement, reminding me of the time-worn routes we had traveled together all those years ago. I crossed my arms, my fingers brushing against the cool metal of the gate. "It's exactly what I want, Jean. Or at least, it would be if you'd stop overthinking everything." His jaw clenched. I recognized that familiar tension. I could sense his internal battle, the gentle push and pull, and for a moment I regretted invoking that familiar edge. He always wanted to protect me, but it often felt like he was trying to keep the world at bay as well. "I'm not," he began, but a quick shake of my head silenced him. "No, really, just trust me on this." I stepped back, leaning against the gate, and locked eyes with him. "Let's just go, to our hometown. It's been ages, and I need this." The weight of my past nestled back into the forefront of my mind like an unwelcome guest, but today felt different. Daring, even. Jean's gaze softened, and that old warmth bloomed between us, like the sun breaking through clouds. "You don't think going back there will stir up, I don't know, memories?" His brows furrowed, as if the stretch of our younger years creased his heart into a roadmap of longing and regret. I scoffed lightly, though not unkindly. "Memories are generally unavoidable, Jean. We've danced around them for long enough." But even as I said it, I felt the tight coil of anxiety twist deeper in my stomach. Once we stepped onto that familiar ground, the ghosts we had buried might claw their way back to the surface. I hoped I was stronger than before, but was I? We lingered there, caught in a moment heavy with unspoken words. Just then, Sam, my neighbor and fast-talking confidant, bounded out of the building with a lively, "Hey, Nicey, ready to party?" Her spunky energy burst into the air like fireworks, the spur I needed to tempt fate. "Maybe a little too spontaneous for this one." I shot back, gesturing toward Jean. "Spontaneity is good for the soul," Sam said, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Come on, Jean. What are you afraid will happen? A walk down memory lane? Sounds exhilarating." She fumbled with her keys, half focused on us while managing her ever-burgeoning curiosity. A reluctant grin tugged at the corners of Jean's mouth. It was subtle, but so entirely world-redeeming that my heart responded without discussion. "Fine, let's go," he relented. I could see the misgivings still swirling in his eyes, but something about this trip felt like it was going to flip our lives on their axis. As we piled into the aging sedan, I knew deep within that this adventure would either solidify the foundation we were tentatively trying to lay or reveal chasms we had yet to fully acknowledge. The drive to our hometown felt too quick, a mere hour, yet within moments, nostalgia washed over me like the unbidden sound of the waves crashing against the shore. The air, infused with salt and age, echoed memories of a different life, one filled with laughter and cold milkshakes at Josie's diner, secret rendezvous behind the high school gym, and the giddy thrill of young love. I could see the familiar contour of the coastline slipping into view, and each landmark stoked a flicker of yearning within me. The older houses lining the streets, their chipped paint and weather-beaten facades, had lived through as many stories as I had. It hasn't changed much, Jean said quietly, eyes scanning the old neighborhood. I remember riding my bike up and down this street, nearly burning your tires off, I interjected, my smile bursting forth. And let's not forget you imitating Elvis at the school talent show. Jean chuckled, and I savored the sound, locking it away. You were right there beside me, dancing badly. Oh, I had talent. Thank you very much. You were the show stealer. Before he could dispute it, I pointed out a small park adjacent to the cafe where we spent endless hours pondering our futures, the bittersweet laughter echoing against the backdrop of rustling leaves. Another wave of warmth washed over me. This place holds so many memories, Jean said softly, and secrets. The word lingered, heavy as the humid air. Would secrets cast a long shadow over today? I brushed it away, reluctant to let the unease seep into our reunion. Let's make more memories, I declared, dismissing the ghost of their shared past, though I felt Jean's gaze linger, seeking something deeper within me. The cafe, too, bore the marks of time. As we approached, the familiar sound of chimes heralded our arrival, and the scent of baked goods in the air made me smile like a child. I already envisioned the sweet frosted cupcakes I had devoured after school. Mind if I order for you? Sam said, her enthusiasm contagious. You mean you'll just go ahead and get me what you want? I released a playful sigh. Of course, the usual, right? I'm feeling spontaneous, I replied defiantly. Surprise me. Jean leaned in closer, soft amusement hidden in the lines around his eyes. Be careful what you wish for. As Sam busied herself at the counter, Jean and I settled into an inconspicuous booth, sun streaming through the window, draping us in amber light. I felt the warmth pooling between us, a shared understanding growing. Nicey, he began quietly, I need to. But just as he spoke, an older couple entered, their chatter echoing through the cafe, unwittingly breaking our moment. I directed my attention toward them, aware of the spark of jealousy that flickered in the air. Do you think they're still together? I nodded toward the couple, who clearly embodied years of shared memories and joys. Maybe, Jean replied, a thoughtful look crossing over his face. What does it mean to stay together? How do we know if it's worth it? For a moment, the collective warmth of the cafe dimmed, tension shimmering between us. You're thinking too much again, I said playfully, but there was an undercurrent of seriousness that threaded my laughter. Before he could respond, Sam returned with a triumphant grin, a colorful array of pastries piled high on the tray. Ta-da! The Nicey surprise. Jean's eyes danced with amusement as he consented to my questionable audacity. The bakery on the tray boasted an amalgamation of flavors, lemon-glazed, raspberry cream, a chocolate delight that looked far too rich. Okay, you went all out, I said, and my heart sang at the innocent joy we created between swirls of sugar. Delightful, aren't they? Sam said, clearly pleased with herself. We're indulging today, Sam. No hesitation. I took a bite, the sweetness bursting on my tongue, a moment so perfect I wanted to hold on to it forever. Jean glanced from my expression to Sam's teasing grin, the laughter in his eyes now softened by a hint of nostalgia. This, he began, and I felt the profound weight of what he wanted to say pressing against a barrier neither of us could quite breach yet. Let's explore after this, I suggested, wanting to keep the lightness alive. There's a whole town waiting for us to reignite that joy. His gaze met mine again, now a weighty thing, the air heavy with potential. Okay, but if trouble finds us, you're taking all the blame. And if joy finds us, then we will share it. A warmth blossomed between us, an unassuming promise teetering on the edge of something grander. When we left the cafe, the sun had dipped lower, casting a golden hue across the town that felt both inviting and haunting, a map of intertwining emotions. I felt reckless and alive, as if I had been given a second chance to reclaim a piece of my past. Where now? Sam asked, practically bouncing on the balls of her feet with eager anticipation. How about the lighthouse? I proposed, a spot laden with history, where Jean and I had shared countless tales. Ah, the lighthouse, Jean said, his tone almost solemn now. The light that guided us. Or illuminated our inadequacies, I quipped back, determined to cut through that burgeoning seriousness. As we made our way, I could feel Jean's hesitant presence beside me. I wanted to crack open the surface of our laughter and let the deeper things pour out, awkward moments, and bittersweet lacks of courage. The lighthouse stood tall against the evening sky, the sea breeze tousling my hair, tugging at the buried worries. As we climbed the steps, the spiral staircase creaked beneath us, each echo a reminder of skeletons in the closet's secrets and choices we had chosen to let lie. "I can't believe we used to climb this for fun," I said, pausing mid-step. Jean's eyes mirrored the flicker of reminiscence. "Yeah, and we thought we were invincible." "Or foolish," I added, heart racing at the symbolism. "Maybe even reckless." At the top, the view unfolded before us in breathtaking splendor. The horizon spilled beyond, the sun kissing the water, colors bleeding into each other and setting the sky ablaze. In that moment, standing together, breathing the salty air, I felt the tendrils of connection bind us anew, lifted by laughter, nostalgia, and the soft unveiling of desire. "Thank you for today," I whispered, leaning against the railing, letting the coolness seep into my skin. Jean turned to me, the shadows of doubt fading, replaced by a new tenderness. "Thank you for showing me the way back." With cities bathed in dusk beneath us, I realized that within the pulse of our reunion lay the promise of something more than adventure. It was a beacon meant to guide us both home. The next wave of laughter caught up to us, pushing aside remnants of the past and whispering a secret that lingered longer, trailing like the last light of dusk. "Now, let's make sure this lighthouse isn't just a memory," I said, merging laughter with a deeper resonance. "Then it's decided." Jean leaned in, his intentions clear, his eyes glinting with a spark I dared not fully acknowledge in that moment. Yet, as I stood against the night, I felt a sense of arrival, a homecoming both exciting and terrifying. Today could be the start of everything, or the rehashing of untitled memories, but I wouldn't shy away. "Let's find the adventure, Jean." And just like the lighthouse, I knew we were both destined to illuminate each other's paths, no matter how turbulent the storm. Chapter 15. Moments of clarity. It struck me as absurd how a simple task unpacking a suitcase could feel so monumental. Boxes of memories, wrinkled clothes, and remnants of our shared history littered the faded wood of the motel room floor. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and something akin to lavender, attempting to mask the stale tang of neglect. It made me think of how loneliness hangs in the corners of our lives, how it clings like dust, settling into our most cherished belongings. "Nicey, you've packed enough shoes to open a boutique," Jean teased from the other side of the room, a smile curling his lips, accentuating the charming lines around his eyes. Those eyes were still as magnetic as I remembered, guiding me through layers of complexities and unspoken truths. I glanced over my shoulder at him, my jaw clenched. A girl needs choices, especially in places like this. The weight of my words hung in the air. It was an innocent banter that concealed tighter emotions. It swirled around us like an unseen storm. He leaned against the dresser, arms crossed, and the relaxed posture belied a tension that I felt deep in my bones. The remnants of our decades-long silence struggled for breath in the scant space. His gaze flickered to the window, where the shadows elongated as the sun dipped toward the horizon. "Life's too short to have regrets about shoes," he said, a hint of vulnerability tugging at his voice. And there it was again, his knack for probing beneath my surface. Here we were, two old friends turned something else entirely, determined to unpack not just belongings, but emotions long tucked away. I returned to my task, fingering the delicate fabric of an old blouse I rarely wore. It reminded me of laughter shared on sunny afternoons, the taste of lemonade, and secrets whispered between us. "Why don't you wear this anymore?" Jean stepped closer, his fingers brushing against the sleeve as he looked at me. The unguarded look in his eyes felt disarming. "It's just not me," I sighed, feeling the weight of years pressing on my shoulders. "Not anymore." Yet there I was, living with remnants of a life that felt like a ghost. A silence stretched between us, a chasm filled with the memories we hadn't confronted, shadows of who we once were. Finally, I moved to the window, flinging open the curtain to let in the dusty light of early evening. The glow caught Jean's profile, illuminating the lines of a man caught between the weight of his past and the promise of the future. "Look at that," I said, half facilitating distraction. "Just look at it. Half sunset, half gloom. It's how I see myself." "Always the poetic one," he replied softly. "But you're more than that. You're a sunlight sort of person. It's just hidden sometimes. I turned to face him, the warmth of his compliment coloring my cheeks. That's generous, Gene, and also terribly mistaken. Is it? His penetrating gaze pushed against my defenses, those barricades of humor and sarcasm that I had carefully built over decades. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, entwined with a yearning I had long dismissed. You know, sometimes I think you shy away from the very light you are. Why do you always have to do this? My tone was sharper than I intended, startling even me. Why can't we just enjoy the moment for what it is? We're old friends, he finished, a wry smile playing on his lips. Or maybe something else. And it hit me like a tidal wave, the unacknowledged feelings crashing over me, ricocheting in this small, cluttered space. Maybe you're right, I whispered, the admission flickering like a candle in the wind. Maybe I do hide. Just then, a sudden knock on the door disrupted the intensity between us. This wasn't just the distraction I welcomed, more like an unwelcome intrusion, a reminder that the world lurked outside. I caught Gene raising an eyebrow, amusement dancing in his eyes as he said, "That must be Tim. His timing has always been impeccable." "Right on cue," I muttered under my breath, exasperated but secretly amused. "Tim," Gene called, opening the door to reveal our old friend bursting with youthful exuberance. Tim entered with a flourish, spinning an imaginary lasso and throwing his cowboy hat onto the bed. "You two look like you're about to jump off a cliff into a riveting conversation. Or unpack a nightmare of unfulfilled dreams," I quipped back, eyeing Tim's exaggerated theatrics. Hey, keep it light," he laughed, clapping his hands together. I brought snacks, chips, salsa, and a jug of questionable fruity punch. We need fuel for our exploration of the town. In moments like these, I saw how Tim was the catalyst, effortlessly bridging the gap between Gene and me. He kept things from getting too heavy, buoying the atmosphere with his infectious enthusiasm. "Why, thank you, O master of snacks," I replied, quickening my pace to loom over the makeshift carrying party. "But what happened to the self-proclaimed master of absurdity? Isn't that your title?" Tim waved his hand dismissively. Humor danced in his eyes. "I shift with the seasons. And speaking of seasons, we have to catch one last sunset before it disappears completely." Oh, the delicate dance of emotion. I could see Gene nodding, reading the transformation in my demeanor as Tim's presence lightened our unwieldy tension just a notch. All right, Gene relented, pushing away from the dresser as he chuckled. "Let's see what paradise looks like in this corner of the world." "Paradise is subjective," I remarked lightly, looking at both of them. "And you, Tim, are the most subjective person I know." "Because I am always right," Tim declared, puffing out his chest and embracing the role of a fool with exuberance. Half an hour later, we stood on the balcony of the corner suite, narrow beams of lavender and tangerine weaving over the horizon. I took a moment to breathe in the sea air, savoring its saltiness, mingled with the slight mint of the unfinished cocktail sitting on the railing. I marveled at how fleeting this moment felt, a fleeting sunset reflected against the backdrop of unfinished conversations and emotions begging to be aired. "What do you think?" Tim asked, his voice full of expectation. "Isn't it everything you dreamed it would be?" "It's gorgeous," I whispered, lost in my thoughts, though I sensed Gene's presence beside me. "This is where you and I made our first promise," Gene said softly, his words carrying the weight of unaccomplished vows. "Why do you always bring that up?" I turned to him, curiosity burning in my chest. "What do you even want that promise to mean?" "It means I wished I could rewind certain moments. Rethink choices," Gene said, his voice rippling through the sunset. "I made a promise to protect you, to keep you safe, and I so badly want to fulfill it." The air turned electric, thick with anticipation. "You can't undo the past, Gene. You know that." "I know," he sighed deeply, frustration mingling with longing in his voice. "But maybe we aren't meant to. Maybe we just need to confront what we feel, take ownership of this moment." I hesitated, my heart racing. Would confronting the truth only deepen the chasm or start to mend it? Just then I felt a warmth dive into my thoughts, the gentle embrace of vulnerability nudging against me. "We can't hide anymore," I whispered, more to myself than to him. And as dusk settled around us, and the stars began to peek through the veil, I glimpsed a future intertwined with possibilities as twisted as the shadows on the wall. Bound by promises, and the breathless tension of unspoken desires. Chapter 16. Crisis Brings Closer. As the autumn winds began their mournful dance, swirling the brittle leaves into urgent spirals outside, I found myself ensconced in Jean's well-worn study, its walls lined with books that seemed to whisper secrets I yearned to uncover. The sharp scent of aged paper mingled with the faint aroma of cinnamon, remnants from the pie Jean had baked for our impromptu gathering of friends. I could hear their laughter wafting through the door, but the room's stillness drew me deeper into my thoughts. Jean stood before an open window, his silhouette framed by the fading light of day. In the amber glow, he seemed both vulnerable and impenetrable. I traced the contours of his face, a reflection of a man who had carried the heaviness of promises unfulfilled for too long. "Nicey," he said, breaking my reverie, but the tension in his voice urged me to stay quiet. "There are some things I need to share with you." The weight of those words felt like a storm gathering on the horizon. I turned slightly, my fingers brushing the edge of a leather-bound journal, almost expecting it to provide a clarifying insight into things I could not yet bear to articulate. "Something feels off," I finally ventured, my voice cracking the silence. "Is it the gathering? Everyone seems a bit apprehensive." Jean's gaze drifted away, and I could see his brow furrow. "It's more than that. A crisis has swept through the community. It's going to affect everyone, including us." My heartbeat quickened. That vague unease I had sensed amidst our laughter gnawed at my insides. "What kind of crisis?" "The dam is failing," he said simply, as if announcing the weather. "The town is facing an evacuation. Many people didn't even know it was an issue until just now." I inhaled sharply, the panic rising with each dwindling breath. "But the town's lifelines, our friends, we have to come together. We can't just stand by, Jean." "I know," he replied, his voice steady, yet laced with an urgency that tugged at my heart. "They're organizing teams. We'll help where we can." Even as I processed the chaos outside our walls, I couldn't help but draw strength from the man before me. Standing in this quiet space, there was something powerful in facing life's anomalies together. For just a moment, I forgot my own insecurities, focusing instead on our shared purpose. "Let's get everyone rallied then," I suggested, a slight tremor of determination creeping into my tone. He nodded, but then a silence enveloped us, a moment filled with unsaid words and unbroken eye contact. The weight of the moment pressed against my chest as if we were the only two souls in a world set to topple. Our breaths mingled, creating something unspoken yet grounding. "Nicey," he began, as if testing the waters. "Let's just focus on the crisis for now," I interrupted, forcing a smile though my heart raced. Yet, deep down, I knew our lives were intertwined in ways we hadn't yet unraveled. This crisis required us to confront not just the present, but also the layers of our shared past. "Right, then let's gather the others," he said, anticipation weaving through his voice. Our friends filed into the room. The weight of their collective anxiety imposed an irony upon the festive occasion. The gap between laughter and urgency was like a tightrope we needed to walk with care. Rita, with her flaming hair, noticed the tension first. "Nicey, why do you look like you've just bitten into a sour lemon?" she joked, her playful demeanor a welcome relief. "Dramatic much?" I shot back, settling into the familiar rhythm of our friendship, the sarcasm spinning a thread through the chaos. "Everyone's life is about to get complicated." Her expression softened. "Got it. But you know we're in this together." Rita's words were an anchor, reminding me that in community, strength proliferated. I glanced toward Jean, who had begun arranging chairs to accommodate everyone. I caught a glimpse of his acute awareness of each detail, something that always amazed me, but now it felt oddly comforting too. Stephen entered last, his brow furrowed. "I can't believe this is happening," he said, grappling with the uncertainty. "What do we do?" "Rally together," Jean suggested, commanding attention effortlessly. "We need volunteers for the evacuation efforts at the town hall. Decide who's going to do what." "Count me in," Rita said, her voice bubbling with determination. Jean's glance shifted to me, awaiting my input. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Anticipation hummed like static in the air. Before I could respond, Jeanette arrived, breathless as if she had been running from the very crisis we spoke of. "Guys, I just spoke to the council. They're asking for anyone with practical skills. electricians, plumbers, anyone who knows the area. Then we are needed, I asserted, my voice growing bolder as the weight of purpose settled across my shoulders. In moments, our energy shifted from disbelief to action, and I found that laughter broke out sporadically, one delusional relief amidst the confusion. I watched as Gene strategized, his posture blossoming with authority, the same man captivated by books, now commanding a room with confidence. As we split into groups, I found myself paired with Gene. He turned to me, his gaze fierce yet warm. I know this isn't what we imagined tonight would be like. No, I laughed, throwing caution to the wind. But then again, beginnings don't always come with fireworks, do they? More like thunderstorms. I'll take our storm over any fireworks, he replied. A surprise flash of something tender flickered in his expression. With that, we launched into an impromptu plan that felt like a dance, every turn effortless, matching each other's movements as we traversed the urgent landscape unfolding around us. It was breathtaking to work together, to see our paths interlacing once more, even amid chaos. Each step brought us deeper into the conversation, not the kind spoken aloud, but the emotional tapestry woven through our lingering gazes and unspoken understanding. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in shades of indigo and burnt umber, fatigue sprinkled our faces like glittering confetti. We worked late, sifting through the wreckage of what could be lost. In a momentary pause, I found myself side by side with Gene, the town sprawling before us like a map of what we were fighting for. As he sorted through emergency supplies, I felt something stir within, something more than mere camaraderie born of crisis. Gene, I started, but the slight hesitation offered him the chance to sweep his gaze toward me, a world-building shelter forming in unguarded moments. What is it? He asked, and there was a softness buried beneath the urgency, a glimmering vulnerability that tethered my heart. Do you ever wonder if we've been subconsciously marking time? I said, forcing my voice low, waiting for the right circumstances to come back together? His breath caught in his throat, as if the very question had struck a chord deep within. The mounting galaxies of emotions hung in the silence, creating a world only we could navigate. It felt significant, skies heavy with the weight of unacknowledged truths. I've always believed that the most profound connections find their way back, he finally breathed, a hint of sadness mingling with resolve. In that vulnerable moment, I reached for his hand, not in expectation, but in a stupendous urge to connect, which surprisingly, he reciprocated. The warmth radiated through the thin fabric between us, igniting something I had thought lost. As the cool breeze brushed our faces, I laughed softly, surprising myself. Isn't it funny? Here we are, surrounded by chaos, yet somehow our isolation seems to draw us closer. And here I thought we were just good at finding trouble, he replied, his tone teasing, but his grip on my hand tightened ever so slightly, conveying an underlying sincerity. Maybe it's the trouble that shapes us, I said, a burst of warmth bubbling up from deep within, a flare of courage ignited by our shared focus. Maybe, Gene murmured, letting the implication linger. Silence wrapped around us, a comfort, a balm, as our laughter ebbed into the distant echoes of our friends working diligently. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from outside the hall. Shouts filled the air, punctuated by urgency. My stomach dropped. Nicey? It was Stephen's voice, laden with panic. We need you. With a reluctant squeeze of Gene's hand, I hurried to the door, and we both rushed into the fray. The world stretched out before us as I glanced back momentarily, meeting Gene's lingering gaze, knowing that whatever happened, we would navigate it together. Together, I whispered, the word lighting up the spaces between us as the crisis beckoned us forward. Chapter 17. Letter from the Past. As I stood in the stillness of my kitchen, half-heartedly stirring a pot of thinning stew, my mind drifted to a time when everything seemed simpler. The aromas of thyme and garlic filled the air, but the scent of regret hung heavier. I glanced out the window, where the autumn leaves clung precariously to their branches. The world outside spun in a kaleidoscope of reds and golds, a sharp contrast to the dullness that had crept into my soul. It was as though I could feel the weight of the past pressing against my chest, and all I could do was take another hesitant breath. What was I waiting for? Even the orange sun falling lazily behind the trees seemed to notice my indecision, casting playful shadows that danced across the scratched wooden floor. It called me back to a moment I had long tucked away, a moment shared with Jean Fabian. Henceforth, it felt more like a recollected dream, colored with longing and uncertainty. Pushing aside the simmering pot, I reached for my favorite mug, a purple ceramic thing that had survived countless years of my culinary disasters. I pressed it against my chest, feeling the warmth seep through the ceramic and into my skin. My thoughts swirled. How many times had I let myself simmer like that stew, unbothered, growing thick and congealed without worthy exploration? The thought was unsettling. It was then that the screech of my phone broke through my foggy musings, jangling against the countertop. I snatched it into my palm, and my heart plummeted as I read the name on the screen. It was him, Gene. "Nicey, it's me. Can we talk?" I swallowed hard. A torrent of emotions cascaded through my mind. The soft timbre of his voice echoed in my ears, entwined with memories of laughter and shared dreams, yet tainted by the pall of centuries-old promises that still ensnared us both. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen, as a sudden pang reminded me of the letter. The missing piece that had wandered back into my life, surfacing when I least expected it. Just then, my doorbell rang, a sharp intrusion into my spiraling thoughts. My stomach flipped as I let out a shaky breath. Another unwelcome reminder that I wasn't living in solitude. I was tethered to my reality. I opened the door to find Clara, my quirkily confident neighbor, tapping her foot impatiently. Her thick hair was plastered back in a messy bun, and she held a half-eaten apple in one hand like a prop in an offbeat play. "Nicey, you look like you're about to face the Spanish Inquisition. What are you doing? You've been holed up for days," she admonished, brushing past me into the living room, her carefree spirit filling the space. "I assume you're cooking something that won't kill your plants this time?" "Just some stew," I replied, the corners of my mouth lifting slightly. "Not very exciting, but I assure you it's edible. Like you could make anything worse than that casserole disaster. You know, if you want to spice things up, you could always call Jean," Clara suggested offhandedly, her eyes glimmering with mischief. "Stop it. That's the last thing I need right now." I twisted the cuff of my sweater as a mix of warmth and dread washed over me. Clara was far too perceptive for her own good. "He's complications wrapped in satin." "Complications or not, if anyone could handle a little bit of drama, it's you," Clara said, easing herself onto my couch. I leaned against the doorframe, heart racing. "Besides, didn't you go to that sappy little reunion a few weeks ago?" I groaned, leaning my head against the doorframe. "And what did I learn? That our high school selves were foolishly optimistic. It was a train wreck waiting to happen." "Yet you and Jean shared that glance, the kind only seasoned souls like you two possess," Clara pressed, caramel apple half-eaten in her grasp. "If you do talk to him, at least be smart about it. Honestly, what's the worst that could happen?" "Just about everything. Dreaming of missed chances has never solved anything, Nicey. You've got to take the leap," she encouraged, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Beneath her words lurked a thread of truth, yet recalling the misaligned trajectory of my past made the leap feel daunting. The kettle's whistle broke through my tangled thoughts, and I turned to grab it from the stove, pouring water over a fresh handful of tea. The steam curled upward, capturing a fleeting essence. What would it feel like to simply embrace the chaos? To banish the very specter of Jean from my mind? Clara continued, "You've spent long enough simmering in your own insecurities. If that letter is bogging you down, maybe it's time to set it free." I fixed my gaze on her, my heart heavy with the weight of her suggestion. The letter was my own confessional, a bottled echo of Jean's words from a decade ago, urging me to reconsider the man he once was in my life and the man that still lingered in the edges of my memories. It had a power I couldn't fathom, laced with the hope I had long drowned in bitterness. "I don't know, Clara," I muttered, the kettle glowing red-hot in my hand. "What if those memories are better left buried? Or," Clara injected, her eyes dancing with mischief, "what if they're meant to be found, like an Easter egg in the backyard?" "More like a landmine," I countered with a half-hearted laugh, but Clara's laughter was infectious enough to draw me out. I couldn't deny how I missed that, laughter unfurling freely in the dim light of late autumn afternoons. The kitchen clock ticked solemnly, and I suddenly remembered how much time had slipped away in the silence between us. "Let's make a pact," Clara said, hopping off the couch. "If you don't reconnect, I'll give you your favorite dessert at the next neighborhood potluck. But you have to promise me that you won't dodge any more chances." All right, I conceded, a smile breaking through the tension. "I'll think, but I can't promise anything." "Just make sure to think about the good parts," Clara quipped, tossing her half-eaten apple in the air and catching it deftly. "Everyone has their skeletons, but that doesn't mean we can't have a little fun too. Besides, I want to hear all the juicy details." As she prattled on, I drifted slightly from the conversation. Each shared moment between us ignited an old spark, pinpricks of light warming my heart. What was there left to lose? The echoes of Jean's laughter flitted through my consciousness, braiding with Clara's words, urging me to act. Assured, the decision felt like a tantalizing breeze. I could place the letter somewhere profoundly ironic, a stop on Jean's trail. "All right, Clara, I'll reach out to him," I declared, taking a deep breath, my resolve framing the moment with unexpected clarity. "I'll let him know there's something worth discussing." "Perfect," Clara beamed, tossing the apple core into my trash can. "Now that's a worthy adversary to tackle, and I expect a full breakdown of what happens next." "Shouldn't you be working on your own life's drama?" I asked, tilting my head with feigned incredulity. "We all have our entanglements. Speaking of which—" Clara paused, eyeing me mischievously. "What about Nick? You could always seek his advice. He would love to know you're rekindling sparks." "Clara," I exclaimed, a laugh slipping from my lips. "That's not what I meant. You know all of this." "Nicey," she interrupted, grinning. "Life is meant for chaos and imperfect connections. Otherwise, we'd miss out on some glorious messes." And just like that, laughter hung in the air, filling the once muted corners of my heart and pulling me from the grip of uncertainty. In that moment, I knew Clara was right. To embrace the chaos was to live. As she made her way out the door, I heard her soft voice drift back toward me. "Don't forget to wear something fabulous when you charm him again, okay?" With that lingering thought echoing like a challenge, I returned to my kitchen, absorbing the familiar heart of it, the warmth, the clatter of the pot, my own fluttering heart. Just as I neared the counter, I caught sight of the old, neatly folded letter tucked deep among the kitchen clutter. The sight sent prickles of nostalgia down my spine. It waited for me like an old friend, lined with the promises it once held. I could feel Jean's presence lingering through the pages, resonating with each heartfelt syllable. The aroma of hope rose once more, coaxing me closer, and I felt the threads of connection between us tightening. What if this time we rewrote our ending? With a flutter of excitement mingled with trepidation, I reached out, allowing the past to envelop me like a warm embrace. Chapter 18: Unsettling Rivalry. The cafe buzzed with the gentle clinking of porcelain and muted whispers, the scent of freshly ground coffee mingling with the faint sweetness of pastries. Outside, early autumn leaves danced whimsically in the wind, a violent rustling against the pale blue sky, nature's prelude to winter, reluctant yet assured. I perched at a small table in the corner, my fingers drumming against the wood, unease threading through the air. I had chosen this cafe for its familiarity, but now it felt like a spotlight beaming down on moments I was desperate to forget. My gaze flickered to the entrance, heart racing at the thought of him, Jean. Each encounter felt braided with threads of unresolved histories, promises buried yet pressing against the surface. We had shared laughter, shrouded secrets, and a nostalgia that flickered like a candle's uncertain flame. Sipping my cappuccino, I could feel memories desiring to resurface, tussling with the reality that beckoned. And just as my thoughts began to settle, the door swung open. My breath hitched as I noticed David Garner, my high school nemesis, saunter into the cafe with an insufferable smugness. He was older, sure, perhaps even a bit grizzled, but the mirage of confidence cloaked him still. Instantly, I grimaced at the sight of him. The last time I had seen David was at our high school reunion, where he had regaled a table of eager listeners with grandiose tales of his life as a successful entrepreneur. A far cry from the kid who had shoved me into a locker, sharp wit still wrapped in cruel delight. "Is that coffee, or are you just happy to see me?" He smirked as his gaze pinned me to my seat. I offered a dry smile, blood burning at my cheeks. What are you doing here, David? I thought you'd be busy securing deals and brilliant successes. He chuckled, waving his hand dismissively. Just a little lunch break. The higher up the ladder you climb, the more important a good sandwich becomes, you know? His eyes glinted with mischief. He knew exactly how to rile me. The cafe felt smaller now, the air saturated with uninvited tension. Just as the past swelled around us, Gene arrived, the door chiming gently behind him. He stood there for a moment, soaking in the room like sunshine after a storm, and my heart flip-flopped anew. "Nicey," he greeted, his warm voice brushing against my skin like a whisper. I shot him a smile, but the swell of nostalgia was interrupted by a sharp wave of jealousy that cut through me, a visceral reminder of the enmity David carried. Gene waved back, his eyes darting between the two of us, and that brief silence stretched taut, a string about to snap. I stood up, cradling my coffee as if it were a buoy in turbulent waters. "Gene, over here," I called, gesturing him over. The distance felt strange as he crossed the room, every step inviting another clash between rival worlds. "Nice to see you." Gene's gaze lingered on me and then flickered to David, tension tightening his brow. "Quite the reunion we have here," David remarked, his smile smug. "Gene, how's retirement treating you? Still filling the world with art and ethics?" "Quite well, David. And you? Still embellishing stories that no one believes?" Gene countered, his calm voice betraying nothing. I could sense the subtext slithering like a serpent between them, so I chipped in. "David was just telling me he's become quite the mogul. Some things never change, right?" David winked. "You know it, Nicey. Just following the age-old adage, if you can make people laugh, you can control them." There was a forced joviality in his tone that set my teeth on edge. The world contorting around us, I felt Gene's presence pressing in, a solid force against the veiled barbs exchanged by David and me. "Life's not just about laughter, David. It's also about substance," Gene remarked, leaning in slightly, an unspoken resolution flickering in his gaze. The reality of our different paths enveloped me like smoke, suffocating yet exhilarating. The cracks were evident. Gene's sincerity and kindness contrasted starkly with David's glib arrogance. I excused myself to the restroom, the porcelain sink feeling cool against my palms, and watched as the bubbles of insecurity rose to the surface. "Why does he get under my skin?" I mumbled, forcing the words out into the silence. "Why does it matter?" Returning to the table, a pulse of energy surged through the air, intensifying everything, a charged current that enveloped the room. I took my seat, noticing the slight widening of Gene's eyes that spoke volumes. He was weighing words unsaid, feeling the atmosphere throb with the tautness of rivalry and unconfessed emotions. When David excused himself, trailing tales of a new investment, Gene leaned forward, breaking the fragile silence. "Are you okay? I could tell you were uneasy." I chuckled softly, unable to mask the layers of discomfort. "He brings out the worst in me. Remember high school? All those things he did?" "I do, but you're not that girl anymore, and David's not that boy," Gene said, the gentlest wisdom laced in his tone. "You're stronger." "Are you sure?" A lump formed in my throat, vulnerability exposing itself like tender skin. He nodded, his gaze steady, the world of the cafe fading away, leaving only the two of us. "Yes, you always were, Nicey. You have always had this drive." His words floated, fortifying my resolve as I swallowed hard. Maybe I just wish I had chosen differently, instead of chasing after ambition while letting my fears rule my heart. "I know something about regret," Gene replied softly, intertwining our unspoken histories. "I made promises too, ones that still haunt me, choices I can't change." Silence fell, deeper than before, folding around us. The unspoken density, weighted with moments we'd let slip through our fingers. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat. Then, in an exhilarating intoxication of impulse, I reached out, my fingers brushing against his. The warmth radiating from our touch spiraled heat through me, igniting something precariously tender. I held my breath, heart drumming against my ribs, feeling the overwhelming pull of connection. "Gene," I murmured, my voice thick with longing and uncertainty, as the cafe melted into a backdrop of soft colors and sounds, wrapping us in cocoon-like tranquility. Without pretense, he leaned closer, the quiet hum of the room fading away. The collective energy of years washed away, and in that moment, time collapsed. leaving only the space between us, an invitation, trembling with possibility. As his lips brushed against mine, the kiss was tentative yet ferocious, breaking barriers carved from years of silence and distance. The world faded. It was just the two of us, buoyed by a history threaded with passion. Every brush of our lips felt like an eclipse, the darkness of the past met by the burgeoning light of what could be. With a soft sigh, I leaned into him, letting desire kiss the lingering doubts away. Before realities drowned us, the kiss deepened, his hand cradling my face as if I were the answer to every question ever asked. Minutes passed, our mouths exploring uncharted territory, a blissful chaos that felt at once new yet unmistakably familiar. When I finally pulled away, breathless and dazed, the table sat silent around us, the bustling cafe continuing its symphony. "I can't," I barely whispered, an acute awareness washing over me of all that lay ahead. Gene, with his rich brown eyes swirling in understanding, brushed his thumb against my cheek. Sometimes, Nicey, the most unsettling choices lead us to the most profound connections. I wanted to grasp that truth like a lifeline, yet, standing at that precipice, I felt the wind of old securities rush past me, fear uncoiling within my chest. And what if it drives us apart? His gaze softened with an incandescence I had long yearned for. Then we'll face it like we always have, together. And just like that, in the swirl of laughter and warmth of coffee, amid the remnants of rivalry and fear, I found the bricks of my resolve laid anew around a path I hadn't anticipated, steps leading into the light of undeniable connection, shrouded with shadows just waiting to be explored. Together, I echoed softly, the bond strengthening, and for the first time, it felt like a homecoming. Chapter 19, Creative Resurgence. The sun spilled through the kitchen window, illuminating the flour dust that hung lazily in the air. I stood at the counter, fingers hovering over the rough texture of the knotty wood, summoning the courage to roll out the dough I'd been procrastinating with for far too long. Baking had always felt like an act of creation, a way to summon flavor from the emptiness. But today, the act carried a weight beyond mere culinary impulse. Gene had encouraged me earlier, his voice more vibrant than a splash of paint, reminding me that creation doesn't come from waiting, it emerges from deep-rooted courage. Yet here I was, stalled at the threshold of my own ambition, like a ship caught in the stagnating tides of a low harbor. The clenched tension in my jaw mirrored the tightness in my chest, a persistent reminder of untapped potential, and maybe even fear.